Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to VALORANTING, a professional ranting show. Today, we review Valorant merchandise. We count our scrim bucks, and we've got a heck of a lot of VCT matches in North America to go over. I am Mitch Leslie, joined by Van Silly. And we're here with Ryan Central. Veli got too caught up in tweeting Rihanna. He forgot that he had a podcast to do, but Ryan was waiting in the wings, ready to get involved. Thanks for being here with us again, guys.
Yeah, I can't pretend to be Veli. I think I'm literally the opposite side of spectrum. With the X-Men hat and everything, I am the most typical white guy that I could ever be right now. So it's good to be here. I'm sure if Veli manages to show his face, he'll be joining us as a fourth anyway. So I'm excited to see what he thinks of all of the action this week, because it's been insane everywhere across the globe.
I think because Mitch has such a nice flow of hair, he doesn't want to wear hats either. It could have been a hat day today.
Dude, I look crap with hats. Have you seen Ashton Kutcher wear a cap and it all just goes out the sides?
Mine too. Look how fat my cheeks are with a cap. Who cares? I still wear it.
No.
Now you're just doing your best impression of Esports Doug.
My hair. Yeah, Vincent, how do you evolve without a self-preservation instinct? That's kind of wild. Anyway, let's jump into it here. We're going to start the show off on a light-hearted note before I get in there and fuck this guy up. Valentine's Day is come and gone. If you didn't notice that, it's okay. I definitely had a nice Valentine's Day personally. We had plenty of fun memes, as they often do, gentlemen, for Valentine's Day, made their way to Twitter.
I love them too. They were actually pretty funny. There was all those cards that came out as well. Those purple roses or reds. I think you had one too. Right now, I like this one too because we started with the Valorant to Valentine's, and now it's like a Valorant to like Valheim. Apparently, right now these days, everybody's caught up on this Valheim, especially Golden Boy.
Dude, I haven't played it yet. It seems so good though.
Not too sure about it. Not too sure. This one's actually pretty funny too. This one, it's a little bit more subtle. You have to be like 5-head a little bit more to understand this meme.
That's pretty good, actually. I enjoyed that. Motherfucking good. All right, yes. Okay. Thank you, Pansy. I'll have to check it out. If you're single on Valentine's Day, there's a high chance you're also voice banned. This is one of the less broad ones I've seen. I'm pretty sure Dapper tweeted, like, if you're single on Valentine's Day, it's probably because you're ugly as fuck.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, dude?
Honesty is the best policy. What can you say?
I mean, it's all about how you spin it. Yeah, roses are red. You're a sick cunt. That's it. I gotta go feed the baby now. That's basically every sign off to Valoranting I've ever done, which is he's getting fed right now, so we are Gucci. But thanks to Uber Chain for doing that. That she did one for a lot of the Overwatch League talent, I think.
I was still pretty sad about it, man.
Friends was like roses are red, violets are blue, screaming.
Yes,
yeah, that's it.
Sort of sums him up pretty well.
The one from definitely pretty funny.
Key adopter of the loud is funny doctrine. So
it's Zoomer humor. It's Zoomer humor.
For me, it's still a sad Valentine's Day. Technically, I'm taken, but I acted like I'm single because I'm still fully separated from a whole ocean between my wife and I. But it's okay. That's why it's 2 p.m. and I'm drinking wine.
Oh, go get it, baby! Oh my god,
is this like loose women now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, is it gonna become like the Breakfast Club or the Sisterhood of the Traveling Frenzy or something?
Pretty much.
Okay, all right, let's keep moving. One of our favorite segments on the show, we'd like to dip into a little bit of what we're hearing from the Valorant developers during a given week, and we heard a fair bit actually this time around. To be fair. A really interesting conversation, I think, right now around the state of particular agents. I think Yoru is definitely one that's been looked at, but also Viper is being looked at. So the idea of controllers as well, I'm very interested in how the dev team have begun to flesh that out more right now. You've seen Brimstone get brought up a little bit more in line with Omen, and someone like, Hazed, for example, is picking him quite frequently. And we sort of see in this sort of ask the devs that, Viper's being looked at. She's getting more play lately, but it's for a very specific reason, gents.
Yeah. I think if I could start off, I mean, you're starting to see a lot more Viper on Split and on Icebox. And I'm really okay with that, actually. Like, all agents shouldn't be played on every single map so that you add a little bit more of that variety so that, hey, this certain map will use a Brimstone. This certain map will use an Omen. This certain map will use Viper. I think that's pretty cool to have that type of capability with the agents that we currently have and that will come out later on, especially if later on we're going to try to have a pick and ban system or test that out, hopefully that we can have that like League of Legends or like Overwatch or even like Rainbow Six. That'll be pretty cool to test out. But what can we really change about Viper right now? I think her kit is pretty good for these maps. I think it's more the ult. I think we barely use that ult still for her Viper spit. So I'm hoping that's going to be the
Why
one
not?
that's going to be touched about the most.
I
Why not?
mean, I don't know. I feel for Viper herself, like it kind of reminds me of what a lot of Balance had with Overwatch, where you look at the agents, the heroes like Torby and Bastion way back when. They were very niche, very good in certain areas, but they weren't good all of the time. So you saw Blizzard kind of water these agents down a little bit, make them a bit more all-encompassing. That you could theoretically play Bastion and Torbjorn literally anywhere, but you kind of lost their identity a little bit, their niche. And
Mm,
I kind of think that Viper is fine being a niche pick. I'm sure that there's Viper mains aren't happy
exactly.
with me saying that, but at the end of the day, there's going to be more agents added in, and it's going to get harder and harder to find your role within the game. Just because Omen's incredibly meta now doesn't mean that he will be in the future. And I think that if you do buff Viper to a point where she's now very strong, it's just going to be Viper for a long ass time. And we've seen how long it can change to revert some of the stuff coming through, right? So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that the state that she's in now is fine, honestly. And I think the devs kind of want to see how this potential new agent could come into the game as a controller and then see maybe if Viper needs tuning up a little bit.
Mhm. I think that there's nothing, yeah, like you said, there's nothing wrong with a niche sort of pick. I think that
Hmm.
obviously 0% pick rate, like agents, is like something you want to look at. I
Mhm.
also
Like
think though,
almost Yoru. It was like
yeah, exactly. Yours is a
point
good
something.
example of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yuri,
don't
but a
think
zero in the name.
Yeah.
yeah, he's not quite as I guess powerful as maybe he was hoped. To be fair, he probably still is. Like, there's a world where like there's a tweak that's made to Yori that makes him widely adopted, and then he's just busted. And then even if you reverted him to his release state, he'd still be busted because
Hmm.
of the way
Hmm.
that people play around it, or the way that he operates. But I think that is a tougher problem to look at actually, because excuse me, you're actually examining Yori's impact conceptually, because everyone shoots the damn same. Obviously, the gunplay is
Mhm.
standard across all
Hmm.
of these
Hmm.
different agents. So, like you mentioned about watering down heroes in Overwatch so they could be used in almost every composition. That's something that already exists by definition in Valorant because of the gunplay being identical across these different agents. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that's we know the next agent obviously may well be a controller. We can talk about that in a little bit, but yeah,
Mhm.
obviously they're being examined right now. Omen's still getting a ton of play. I
Yep.
think that paranoia is just insane. We see a lot of, especially defensive teams, set up with like paranoia, jet dash, sort of play styles
Hmm.
early in rounds. Like Genji, big fan of that one. We see BBG do it a whole bunch as well. So um, pretty hard to see, Omen, even with those abilities being more expensive, sort of falling out of favor.
Exactly. And I think to get back onto the Euro part, I think the abilities are like still okay, right? We talked about agents coming out and we're like, oh my god, it's gonna be a guy that's gonna be able to teleport, but it's actually not so bad. And it's actually not so bad that nobody's picking him right now because he's actually not that useful. So if it's gonna be a buff, I think I did remember like in the past people were talking about how maybe the sound of the orb could be a little bit less louder, or when he's actually coming out of the tether, it could be less louder as well, where he could actually be that person that's going to be able to sneak around the map and stuff of that as well. But when you're going to be ulting inside the site and everybody's just chasing after you, there's no real way of like understanding how
Yeah.
he could really come out of the ult and be very good and very effective for the team. So we talked about it for the pros. The pros said it has to have a really high ceiling in terms of skill wise to be able to play this agent well. Shanks tried it out. I don't know if it's Temperature or Alexander that was trying out for EG, and I think even for one of the maps for Phase earlier
Corey
on,
played it.
Corey tried it on Split, but it was
Yeah.
against like a lesser known team, so it's like to test things out. But there was nothing that was really effective to have Yoru in the lineup right now. So I'm excited for the new updates or the buffs that Yoru will get.
Also, a piece of Yoru's kit actually depends on his opponents making a incorrect judgment decision.
Hmm.
The fake footsteps are fine, but that ability really depends on how it is perceived by your opponent. You know what I mean? Like,
Correct.
you put
Correct.
footsteps. Does my opponent have good game sense, or is it bad? Does my opponent remember that I'm playing Yoru? Do they remember the fact that I can create fake footsteps? Has that been called out? Is the enemy team tracking the use of this ability over the course of the round? Do they know whether I'd have it available or not? Um, Whereas there are other agents that just do things that are impactful that aren't really like subject to the judgment or game sense of opponents. So fortunately, Yoru has other things in his kit that allows him to, obviously flashes are great. It doesn't really matter if your opponent is smart or not. If they're facing the flash, they're going to get hit with it. And
Mhm.
as it was mentioned now, like the kit's very loud. Like it's really, if you can't see Yori, you can still have a decent idea of what he had for breakfast, you know, because of how noisy some of his abilities are. So something worth looking into. And seeing so how they can tweak him just to make him a little bit harder or a little bit easier for Yoru players to obscure their actual intent. But
Mhm.
we go from
Mm.
something subtle to something really not subtle at all, because we saw a clip earlier this week of Mel from Cloud9 White managing to dodge I say dodge, avoid getting completely blown apart by a showstopper at almost point blank range, and it actually sparked a whole conversation about how that ability works.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty funny one for me because funny. I tried to read through it, and it's funny because I'm one of those fake Asians where when you're starting to talk about math and like angles and there's degrees in there, you lost me in the conversation. Like I don't understand numbers at all. But when I look at this video, it just seems like one of those shots where that rocket actually landed right in that bottom of that crate, right the pallet. And I don't know if you remember, and it still happens today, but when Sage first came out and other abilities like a Molly, for example, if it actually lands, like if you're shooting it on a double stack, but the orb or the Molly lands in between the two boxes on the pallet, then it only burns that area. So I think it's probably that similar fashion, possibly when it actually landed onto the pallet and then like negated all that damage too.
And this is a fairly straightforward sort of explanation. The inner radius is where you take full damage, and then between the boundaries of the inner radius and the outer radius, it sort of drops off. It scales out. So mathematically, that's not very complex, but it's the visibility checks that the ability uses to sort of say, "Hey, is there any collision between us and the player?" And they try and trace that. You can see here these yellow lines. They're the sort of collision checks that the ability is using. So if you're and there will be multiple collision checks as well to see if any part of your sort of geometry is intersecting with any of those lines. I don't think that they're showing all the collision check lines there, but
Mhm.
this next one I think Ryan really sort of illustrates just how this ability works. But you can see it here, a lot of attempted collision checks here, and none of them connect, so no damage.
There's a lot of like weird interactions where this has happened already in pro play. It happened for Europe the other week where I think Soulcast for Team Liquid against FPX fired a showstopper and it completely missed. It went through the legs and just didn't do any form of damage to his
Yeah.
his
There
enemy,
is the
right?
palette.
So I do think it's a bigger deal than maybe people give it credit for, because if that kind of interaction goes a bit wrong in, I don't know, like the Masters Grand Final, then obviously it's a big issue that's going to get brought up quite a lot. I think
Mhm.
hopefully this gets fixed sooner rather than later. It's an interesting description, and I think that's what Riot's been really good at the end of the day too, where they just are really good at kind of explaining stuff, especially if there's a lot of stuff that maybe doesn't look that good on them. They're quite happy to go, yeah, we screwed up. This is why we're running into this problem, because people are genuinely curious how the games get made somehow. Remember when Morello
Yeah.
was like the director of the game? A lot of people would ask him, how they came about creating agents. Even when it comes to when Hitscan talked to the devs about skins and stuff, they tell us how the skins actually work and some of the issues that they run into. So this kind of like forthcomingness from Riot can only be a good thing, even when it's like hey, we kind of screwed up here, but this is kind of what happened.
I think the easiest quick fix for that is just to like patch up the palettes. So get rid of the graphics that has the palettes of that shape and just put it like a flush box. I guess at that point to like omit those details for those type of misses for rockets, mollies, sage orbs, like the slow orbs and all that.
There's also a world where you could increase. I could be talking at my ass here, but if you increase the poly count of the explosion, in theory, more of those vision checks might actually be able to connect with a
Holy
player.
cow,
It
that
really
sounds
depends on
way
what.
too Elon Musk's for me. So I'm just gonna let you run
Yeah.
away with that one and agree.
Okay, yeah. I mean, or you make the palette transparent to those kind of vision checks, right? And then
Mhm,
you still
mhm.
take. That's probably the easier fix. But that could also have. The problem is that it has problems down the line. Like, okay, then how does this affect paint shells or any other ability that has explosive radius or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that? And there could be like, what I've found about programming is that you make a change like that, and then there could be 50 unintended bugs down the line as a result
Mhm,
of this one decision. So,
mhm.
um, I'm curious to see how it works out. I mean, I don't think we get new really highlighting what they are doing exactly to correct it, but you could almost get enough information between new and evermore. You have enough information to reverse engineer a competitive FPS game with a competitive ladder. from all the information these guys have been giving. So, look, we're not necessarily entitled to such a really interesting look behind the curtain in the game dev world. So again, I
Which is
reiterate,
cool. Yeah.
this is awesome.
Mhm.
And I'm not really used to seeing this at all. I mean, to be fair, I started in Call of Duty 4 where the devs didn't even know that pro mod existed. So we've come a long way indeed. But while we're still on the topic of what developers are up to as well, we've had some updates on the revamped penalty system here. So for those of you that get chucked in the sin bin, well, it's about to get even nastier for you.
I love it. I'll let you talk first, Ryan.
Yeah, there's only one that I really don't like, which is potential like rank decrease if you dodge a queue, which I think a lot of people have had to do. Yeah, if you're trying to avoid icebox, then yeah, you should get penalized for that because you're just being a bit of a dick. But certainly from talking to a lot of the European people where there's a lot of chat banned players in ranked, you will want to avoid them as much as you possibly can. So that's the only change I really don't like. With a lot of these, it's just making sure that AFK is a little bit easier to spot. Some people are very good at being able to kind of jump through loopholes in order to still be AFK without being AFK, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So a lot
Just
of it is
train a
meant to
little
be sort of
mouse to
rolling
move
in.
your mouse
Exactly.
around the table.
Yeah,
every
just
now and
kind of
then.
like the Counter-Strike spinning in a circle kind of thing. People have
Yeah.
been very good at being able to avoid that. But yeah, this is kind of, they spoke about it previously, where they've said we want to make sure that chat banned players can't play ranked because that doesn't make any sense. But I think with everything that we've talked about, the thing that helps Riot and Valorant here is just the terms competitive integrity. Because it
Mhm.
feels that every single topic, no matter if it's skins or whatever, if it's this kind of thing, they can like, is it good for the competitive integrity of the game? And if they go yes or no, they can make a decision based on that. So
Mhm.
this is the kind of nice change. They have a bit more of a system like Overwatch, where if you report a player and they get banned, you'll get a notice to say that player has been banned. Congratulations, you were in the right of calling out their BS. And so there's a lot of nice stuff in here. In particular, you've got like the patch, I think tomorrow at this point as well, with a
Mhm.
lot of the changes we've been talking about. And so this is just a really good time, I think, for Riot to kind of get their stuff in line. Even the stuff before where they tried to, patch the game in the middle of First Strike, and there were a lot of problems with the patch breaking the game. They've learned from that, and now we're playing on a tournament client. And so, as a content creator, from my perspective, I guess in layman's terms, it's super cool to just work with somebody like Riot that are very forthcoming on those kind of things. And honestly, it makes a huge deal of difference when you're working with people like that, as
Mhm.
opposed to other games that we've covered where we get a message at midnight that a patch has gone live and then we need to suddenly make a video on that kind of thing. So, it's helped out my mental a lot, just being able to work with Riot and go, hey, there's a patch coming out tomorrow at this time. We'll even sometimes give you the patch notes beforehand so you can have a look and, maybe get your video prepped. And so it's just cool to be working in that kind of environment instead of
Mhm.
there's a patch, freaking go, get a video out, try and go up against 5 different people. It's just,
I remember being at
strenuous.
BlizzCon and I was talking to Stylosa and there was a patch dropping the next day and like we did like the show and like the appearances on maybe he did a signing and he had to go back to the hotel room and just produce his video because there was a patch coming out the next day.
BlizzCon is awful for creating content because there's no like, you have like a streaming station, which is really cool, and I like that they do that for the new stuff, but there's no recording stations anywhere. So you kind of have to use all of the assets. It's better, literally, when it comes to covering BlizzCon content, just as a sidebar, it's better to stay at home because you could just take stuff from the VOD and do it from home, as opposed to being there and playing the stuff yourself. Yeah, I love Blizzard and I'm excited for Overwatch 2, but it's just so much easier to make content for, I suppose. And, part of it is you
Exactly.
are literally a mouthpiece for the company. So you kind of have to accept that in some cases, with the skins and stuff. We get to look at it early. We know that we're just, signal boosting them, but they understand that it's a partnership and it works for both sides. So
So-
it's
You are
Communication
really
is
warm.
key,
You
man.
are warm marketing with a pulse, my guy.
yeah. I am happy to shell out for anybody that's willing to treat me right.
Quickly to circle back, actually, one thing that we kind of glossed over in that articles, I think the second last section, it said that Riot are planning to roll out the same penalties, but also detection methods for voice chat. So somehow there is almost the promise that they will be able to understand, to pass through, to detect the content of what is said in voice chat. Now, I have heard this idea briefly floated here on the horizon. These types of detections will come to voice comms as well. How? How? Are we going to see like job listings for like call center type jobs where people literally have to sit in voice, like listen to voice chat recordings? Like, I'm really curious.
I
Maybe
think
there's
that's
an
really cool,
AI.
though.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I kind of I think I talked about this before, and I think like the best way to do it is like you flags you report someone for voice chat, and then like I guess there has to be somehow it like saves whatever that was said on their side, the recording, and then it's gone over. But I don't see how that's supposed to work.
but it does make sense. Like, I mean, Tormented by Gnomes in the chats talking about that, and we are at that pretty much at that technology now, right? If I do like a Alexa or a Hey Google, my phone's gonna light up, or my fucking whatever it is, my Echo is gonna light up too. So if they have that type of technology to get into the voice chat, because if even if you're looking at this at the TOS for Twitch right now, if I'm saying a certain word recently, it's gonna get banned now, and nobody's using that word anymore, right? You're gonna get chat banned, or you're gonna get your channel banned, or whatever. So there's probably is some technology back there. I don't know, because I'm not the type of programmer or that ingrained into that technology. But the idea of it is actually really great in terms of battling the toxicity. We've seen so many posts coming out from women being harassed as soon as they start speaking in voice comms too. I think that this is great when parents are not being held accountable from raising their children to not be fucking idiots in voice chat, and to have this to give accountability to all these players to not be as toxic, or to not be toxic at all, is definitely a step in the right direction. So if they have some type of way, and it's going to cost a lot of money to try to make the game more accessible and likable, I'm sure Riot's going to put the money into it.
Essentially, the only person with the time to review these voice chat reports is regional Ryan Central right now.
Yeah. Moonlighting for an opportunity anywhere, literally.
Right, like, okay, what you said all sounds really nice, Vancity. It sounds fucking great, but I don't think anyone has thought about how this. I don't know, has anyone thought about how this actually works? Like, a player gets reported, but basically you have to then you need to tell some players get reported like after the game as well. You need to tell the system to save a cache of everybody's voice comms from a certain game for a certain time within some window of them getting reported, like in the scoreboard after the match, right? And then essentially it needs to take the cached recording of the player's voice, attach that obviously to like the report dossier, if you will, and then go to someone for review. So some poor motherfucker has to sit down and literally go through like clip after clip of like incels using the N-word and stuff. Like,
yeah, they put that in the database.
I'd rather work on Law and Order SVU than do that. I'd rather be that kind of police officer. You know what I mean? That is absolutely brutal. So I don't know how they expect to do that. I'd love to hear, because I mean, you know, I see so many players get away with it. Like they just don't type in text chat, and they just say a bunch of stuff in voice chat. And the only way you catch them is if they're like, you know, streaming or whatever. But I cannot wait to see. Also, I'll be honest with you guys. There are some worrying implications of that. Don't get me wrong. I think that, you know, holding people accountable for how they use voice chat is fine. But the technology and the implications of, you know, being listened into at all times is also maybe outside of Valorant. You know, we're already concerned about our smart devices, you know, listening, and they do, man. I talk about a certain product that I might buy to Ashley, and I'm sat on the couch, and my 25 billion smart devices, including my smart drinking glass, just beam it all to Google Ads. The next time I open up, I'm looking at ads for this exact thing. So that I mean, it's a worrying trend. That's all I'm gonna say. You know,
it's very Black Mirror. It feels like the premise of a Black Mirror episode just to begin with, right? It's just that whole kind of nightmare scenario that could go wrong.
Yeah. So I mean, anyway, that's a sidebar for you. Let's move along though. Speaking of worrying escalations, we've just seen Riot's new game mode announced today, which may be familiar to some of you that have been playing FPS for a while. Escalation is, I guess, ostensibly a ridiculous game mode where you're constantly upgrading weapons. It seems like CS:GO gun game or arms race, they call it now. This game mode's been around for a little while. I mean, people have also modded it into Overwatch custom lobbies because it's quite popular. What are our thoughts on this?
I like it. I think this is pretty cool. And you see like like that is actually really cool. It looks a little bit cheesy with like all the rockets and stuff like that too, but it doesn't happen every round. So my understanding, reading the patch notes real quick, is like you said here, Mitch, a gun game, but mixed with team deathmatch. So if you get a frag, or you get a frag on a lower level, so if you get a frag at the right level, let's say at level 1, then you get 1 point. If you actually get to level 2, but your opponents are at level 1, then they get 0.5 points for every kill that they get. So as a team, if you're getting it to 7 points in total, you're moving into the next level, and then the first one to 12 or something like that wins the game. And it could go from starting with the showstopper to moving to the Vandal to level 2, to then getting into round number 12, where it's going to be like shorties or the snowball that we had for Christmas, just to try to determine our winner. The game is only 8 to 10 minutes, which is going to be perfect for you, Mitch, because it's kind of like playing Spike Rush for you. With
Fuck
the
you.
as you have no time, you can still be able to get some fun in Valorant. So I think it's a pretty fun concept, something pretty new as well for the casual gamers to play it as a game.
Hey,
I
dude,
got
I
two
can
hot
Rosa
takes.
ult without queuing up for a full
Pretty
like
much.
match. I'm
Yeah.
there, dude.
Pretty much.
Just missing with everything we've gone over. So I have two hot takes on this. One
Okay.
is that Valorant's success is going to be built off of these small game modes in the future. I think if you look at this game in comparison to its casual player base, and let's say if there's like 50 people watching, how many people do you think actually play a lot of the actual version of Valorant, even unrated? I would actually say it's quite slim. Even with like our audience and the esports audience, I would be surprised if more than half play Valorant on a regular basis. You might compare that to Overwatch or League, that might be a bit different, but I think that these more casual game modes is going to be what makes this game succeed in the long run.
Yeah, man.
With the flagship being its competitive mode and being this high end bit of competition. My second theory, I think we're getting a new map in Act 2, just based off this alone. Why have they released a new game mode now when Act 2 starts in 2 weeks? Like, the timing is so weird on that front. And so I could feel that they maybe put out this game mode a little bit early because the start of Act 2 has some pretty big stuff in it. We know that there's going to be an agent because every act starts with an agent. But
Yes.
I could definitely see quite a lot of content coming in. Otherwise, why would they have not put this at the start of Act 2? We got a new agent, we got a new game mode, a new skins, wow. But the fact that they've put this out 2 weeks beforehand, that is just a little bit weird.
That's
I
a
think
fair point.
Yeah, but I think you're supposed to have like 2 maps per year, right? Was the plan originally, which
But
means
they wanted to like escalate it, right? They want to like because of the complaints that they've had about only having 4 maps for a long time. They are effectively, in the nicest way, trying to shit out maps as quick as they can.
Well,
because
that's
that's
why
the biggest
Icebox was shit out, so to speak.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
I mean,
right.
because they needed it for First Strike.
it was supposed to come out now.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was the
exactly.
Act 2 map, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
So
that's why I think there's that.
I do think that on that front, yeah, I hope that they take their time more with maps now that we have 5, and I think the esports scene is a lot better and a lot stronger now that we have Icebox, and people are actually trying to play it and get better at it as opposed to actively dodging it. But like they are going to push until we get 7 maps. It's beyond 7 to in the future where there could be like 10 or even 20 maps that things might get a little bit crazy. But that's the biggest complaint for Valorant, right? The content, the amount of maps that there are in the game, and so it wouldn't surprise me if they just want to try and get those out ASAP.
I also think that you bring up a great point to say that this is going to be determining the success of the platform or the game of Valorant, to have all of these game modes that's going to appeal to like any casual gamer that wants to get into Valorant. Because when you're looking at League of Legends, for example, they have a huge player base of watching esports and stuff like that too, but not everybody's going to be grinding to get their way to challengers. And for me to like have some quick games or to have fun playing League of Legends, I'll play some ARAM. If you look at Overwatch, Mitch, I guess you have all these game modes that are out right now as well, that allows you to just play the game more casually. And if you want to focus on the esports side, you have that opportunity and that option as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I don't queue up for anything that isn't ranked in Overwatch, but I think it's just because I'm kind of used to the intensity, I guess, of that experience. I think I actually, Ryan, you might even know this, but I would say the split between those who play quick play and custom games, like, and ranked in a game like Overwatch, which I think by its nature appeals to a slightly more casually leaning player base. I think it would be hugely sort of tilted in the quick play and custom game direction.
Yeah, my girlfriend plays Mystery Heroes and Total Mayhem only, right? And sometimes a bit of deathmatch. So there aren't going to be a huge amount of that audience that just, if they're even interested in the esports scene, don't play the game. Even me as a Valorant content creator at this point, I don't play the game as much as I probably should. To be fair, I have to watch a lot of Valorant as well at this point because
Dude, how do you?
Lord
Yeah,
knows
I
I'm
don't know
not
how
fucking
anyone.
casting it, right? So,
No, you're listening. You're listening to voice chat clippings now, bro. You
Yeah.
already volunteered, man.
They've pinged me up, just smearing through the shit that is Valorant voice chat.
I just can't wait to see Ryan Central just like outside of his house at 9 a.m. just drunk, like just leaning on a light pole, like. And then, I can't believe you used that word, bro. It was such a creative use of a slur. Oh my god, man.
I'm already prepping for that role.
Oh, yeah, you got the wine in hand?
Most I've heard is 5 really bad words in the space of a second. I don't know how he did it, but it keeps me up at night, man.
It was point. I mean, I kind of like that. It was pointed out in chat by Daniel that like Facebook mods, those who were tasked with curating the content on the platform, actually really struggled to deal with their jobs and the stuff that they had to witness in general. Um, but anyway, look, I think the game time is anyway. Yeah. Let's not talk about that anymore. The game time is great. I think that's one of the biggest turnoffs for Counter Strike actually. That you know the game is pretty
Intimidating.
yeah, it is. I mean, you walk out to it, it's like, okay, like you know, I get into a game and I'm up against some. I could be Silver Elite Master, doesn't matter. Like I'm still, you know, the atmosphere is extremely austere. Even though, in fairness, since they introduced, especially like the operations and stuff, I've noticed like a lot of people always going like, when do we get new operation? So you know, and they're throwing a couple of maps in there.
They're trying. Yeah, they're trying with maps.
Yeah.
They're trying with Danger Zone for Battle Royale. They've tried with Wingman, for example, Scouts and stuff like that too, 2 versus 2. They have the retake mods. So you see that all of these like old titles that were like premiership, all about competitive in esports, they are trying to evolve a little bit to try to bring more of a player base that's not as hardcore as a person that follows the scene at the esports level.
All right. Well, we also have another couple of things on the horizon. We have been seeing in esports over the last few weeks, essentially teams fucking Tokyo drifting around corners, getting sideways, fucking gatting each other with the frenzy or the stinger.
Yeah.
It takes over round 2 and round 3 in many cases, right? You win the pistol, you're
like
still
5,
going
man.
up against fucking stingers. And so the first 3 rounds and the way the economy works gets put in a bit of a weird position. I'll be honest with you. It is quite strange. So we've heard from the developers, Nick Wu specifically. And if you like League of Legends, you might actually remember this guy. He's obviously been around with Riot for quite a while. He had this to say about changes coming to the Frenzy, which you already know.
I'm not sure that's gonna be the case now.
Yeah, the Frenzy will get a price increase in the next patch coming in a few days. It'll go from 4 to 500.
As we head.
Pretty short and sweet. So increase in price, ostensibly, gentlemen, and that would then make it impossible to buy armor alongside of the Frenzy in round 1. Would that, in theory, make the Ghost now an option against sort of people just, you know, zooming at you with the Frenzy?
So
Hypothetically, it should, right?
yeah.
That's
So
all
I
was
have
gonna say.
I have my say for it too. Is if you actually look at some of the matches right now, even in the past week for VCTs in NA or even in Korea or EU or Latin America, Brazil, Turkey, etc. People are actually even buying frenzies, no armor, so they could get abilities. So to put it at the issue is the issue was at that point is that you're able to still get frenzies and armor. That was the past argument, but now you see that it's frenzies, no armor with utilities. So to be able to put out 500 will now narrow down the amount of abilities that you'll be able to have in the match. So I think that's going to help in that aspect. But I think where it gets a little bit more difficult now is the frenzy is still very strong when you're going to be 5 players or 3 players just running together with frenzies on mid-range battles. That's where it's a little bit
on
iffy.
like a non-equal, like on a round where you can actually afford armor, right? So like, let's say like you're forced into like a half buy and you can still get Stinger full armor and be fucking nasty.
That's right. That's right. So I think even Nitro brought it up. Like the hot take is at his point is not really about. He doesn't find that the frenzy is that overpowered. I kind of believe that it still is because of the range. I don't think it's necessarily about the pricing of it. I do agree with the community that 500 is a great start because it allows, again, less abilities into pistol rounds. Now, the second RNG aspect of it is that at super long range, or when you're bursting in 2 shots or 3 shots like Zom does, or Sick does, it's still very, very good to be able to take your opponents down.
I saw Safe in like this guild match kill someone across the map. It was like,
That's it.
You know, be long on Icebox. Safe is just sat on the other side of a one-way and he's just banged some guy out like all the way down towards attacker spawn. I'm like, oh, what the hell, dude?
That's right. So that's why when you're looking at certain strats, depending on like the compositions that you have, is that some of the teams that have a jet will just buy a sheriff instead because they want to use the opportunity of if you're going frenzy no armor and at that distance you may have more chance that they get the kills with a sheriff versus
Mhm.
a ghost. So I think now it's looking at the range maybe of the frenzy is going to be another added layer that could maybe help things out, because I know we're going to see the SOT a little bit later talking about the stingers, but
Mm.
I do like the fact that at mid range and close range, a frenzy and a stinger is still very effective and very deadly, because those bullets just fly out and you don't have that much in your clip and you have that much to reload either. I think after you reload like 2 or 3 times, you have no more clips left for your frenzy. You have no more clips left with your stinger. So what does that do? And what does that force you to do? Is to play more close range, more aggressive, to get these off angles or the high risk, high rewards type of plays that will pay off if you're investing into that frenzy or investing into that stinger. But it shouldn't have that same effect that with a full range across mid map or a long range map, I could still be able to spray down and kill my
Okay.
opponent at that distance. I think that
Ooh.
is the issue.
I mean, it's not even spraying, but they're not spraying down at long range, right? You yourself just said, Vansily,
They're
it's like a
frenzy
couple
correct.
taps.
They're frenzy
Yeah.
correct. But the stinger you still see where they just like mow down halfway and still get the kill, right? So
Okay.
So there's another thing as well that was said that I think is really important, because we saw Nitro mention it as well. Because I went through all of the clips in the crew for the news and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But he said that when it comes to running and gunning, that's something that they want to actually keep up with both the frenzy and the stinger,
Yeah.
because as SMGs they should be better to use when running and gunning. Bear in mind that those run and gun changes that came to the rifles were just to the rifles. It was just to the Bulldog,
Yes.
Guardian, Vandal, and Phantom. So it doesn't affect the stinger. It doesn't affect the frenzy, which I think is one of the reasons why the stonks in those two guns have gone up quite dramatically ever since.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to hear them go, actually, we want to keep this part, at least keep a close eye on it. If it's still bad, we'll adjust it. But we want to make sure that these run and gun weapons stay as
And why
run
the
and
fuck
gun
would you buy
weapons.
them if they're
Exactly
also
it.
garbage at
That's
running
that's
gun?
exactly what I was gonna say. Like to tie into what you guys are saying. It's like if you're nerfing it for the running gunning, there's no point buying the weapon for that close range, high risk, high reward type of play that you want to do with a stinger or a frenzy. So that's why, like, I think it's still pretty decent to keep that running and gunning for those SMGs and those frenzies. It just forces you to play a little bit more smart as a player if you're playing against those guys when you have Vandals, for example, in round number 3. So I think that's still okay. I think again it's about that range.
This is also a pretty proportionate response by a developer to this kind of outcry, right? I kind of like this. They're not just kowtowing to the community that are getting upset about this kind of game style, but I think that we can all agree that we probably don't want to sort of see like these weapons be disproportionately
Exactly.
powerful, right? I
Exactly.
think that's why Riot, their first port of call is the cost,
Mhm.
because they want to say, listen, you can this strategy can be available to you as a player, this running and gunning style. We want to enable that because it gives us some fucking contrast in this game, and everyone's just using an M4A4 or an AK-47.
Mhm.
But we want to make this costly. I would almost argue that you could jack up the price of these weapons even just a little bit more. The problem is you don't want to have like some weapon like your pistols costing 500 and then everything else costing at least 2K between
Yeah.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
You really do need to. There needs to be this sort of this middle substrata of weapons, but
Mhm.
maybe you just need to find like more jack of all trade, king of none weapons that fill that gap, because it seems like if running and gunning is an option and these weapons are so effective at doing that,
Mhm.
you could probably just increase the price and say, hey, listen, you can either run and gun or you can play a more static, more accurate style. Both of these strategies might be comparable in terms of cost or so I think that messing with the cost matrix there is makes the most sense. If you're never running and gunning, then you really limit players' options in Valorant,
Yep.
and I think that's never a good
That's
game development
Real
decision.
quick,
yeah.
they're buffing the Marshal as well. Bear in mind that they've said that too. So that kind of goes into what you're saying about, if the Frenzy's still good at what they do, and we'll make the Marshal a bit stronger. You have a bit more of a rock, paper, scissors going on, especially in lower buys.
Yeah,
That'll be actually quite interesting for the snipers of the teams too. But just to say like what I said 2 weeks ago, guys, it's like we've just had the nerfs or the changes, not necessarily the nerfs for the Phantom and the Vandal. Everything else is going to be coming. You can't really throw everything out into one shot because it's going to break the game, and you don't really have much to like base on these changes and gather that data from Riot's perspective.
Yes.
So now you have the changes for the rifle first. We're testing things out with the SMGs. We're testing the price of the frenzy, and then we'll see if there's going to be more changes and buffs or nerfs or tweaks that we have to do in the weaponry level. Like I said before, like in other different games that has the money system like CS, they haven't fixed everything on day one, and still today there's still issues on pricing, for example, or debates around the AUG and everything like that as well. So let's be patient about it and see how this game moves forward. And it's good. Like we talked about how open the conversation is between Riot and the player base. So it's good to have that constructive criticism more than the bitching.
All right, last thing I'll say about this is that people maybe wonder why these changes take a long time. And data needs to be collected from the live server, which means that these changes need to come one at a time and they need to be monitored. Yeah. Because there is no value in providing a public test realm. PTRs don't fucking work because it's impossible to gather meaningful data from a server where there are no stakes. There's no reason for players to play properly on a public test realm. All they do is they fucking log in, they try and pick the newest released agent first, and if they don't get it, they fucking leave the game. And if they do stay in the game, they fuck around. Like the Overwatch PTR, useless. Fucking useless for data. League of Legends, same thing. Unless you make or you encourage pro teams to get on that server, play under serious match conditions, you need to incentivize players to actually test this stuff properly. Like, I want to play Yoru. I'm going to load into a game on the PTR. Ah, shit, someone had a SSD. They pick Yoru. Well, fuck it. I don't want to play anymore. And I see this happens all the time, right? You cannot get information there. So that is why these changes don't all happen at once. That's why people need to be patient. You can literally just take a couple more developmental leaps in terms of your frontal lobes, and then you sort of realize that there is a good reason that these things actually take time and you don't get everything that you want straight away.
Be patient.
Yeah. Let's move on. We had a really interesting exchange this week on Twitter, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of rumors that I heard from sort of scrims in Overwatch, for example. Sentinels and TSM, they scrimmed. I don't know how often they scrim. And Hayes, first of all, he doesn't. Fair enough. I'm a Hayes fanboy. I'll say it right now. He doesn't call out the team. But apparently it was Sentinels, because then you see Sinatra, of course, he gets straight on involved, and all of a sudden what was just passive aggressiveness turns out into, hey, you're a dickhead. No, you're a dickhead. And then clown emojis for everybody.
I love the fact that Hayes is pretty much at this point when he says holy shit, like, you know, the old man, like, listen here, you little shit, just fully goes off at him. But then everybody has to get involved. I want to see that VOD. I want to see a whole production and shebang, and it would be nice to see these two face off, but one of them can't seem to qualify into the main tournament, so it's unlucky. I will give it that much, but yeah, it's a tough old one.
We can delve into it, right? Because basically what was being, both teams accused each other of playing in like a non-competitive manner. You're sort of seeing a lot of the responses here in this particular thread, but generally speaking, it sounds like TSM were getting accused for, trolling by playing 4 Guardians. But if you watch VCT, they actually were playing Guardians.
Yep.
So, and Hayes was like, listen, we're not actually throwing. We actually think this could work. And he also admitted, the best part is he also admitted that like Sentinels were the better team. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, you guys are just like running around with 4 Guardians. Hayes is like, no, I mean, you're a better team than we are right now. We're literally just trying to do this. So I read it. I'm just like, did Sinatra miss the part where like there was just the admission that they were better, and also that they weren't? I don't know. You can probably just let that kind of stuff go. But obviously, the community loves this stuff. I think Sinatra is always going to rise to this kind of thing.
So is Hayes.
And to be fair,
so is everybody from TSM.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like Hayes obviously tweets it out. Like you probably don't need to tweet it out. The thing is that like even if one of those guys is wrong, they won't realize it because their fanboys are just jerking them off.
Exactly.
Like, the whole way through. Go,
exactly.
Daddy, let him have it. Oh, yeah, Sinatra, what a juiced up gaming warlord. Yeah, you tell him he's old.
it is literally like the cartoon lackey of like, yeah, get him, boss. Just shit.
That's the thing.
Literally is just Timmy's just fucking prodding the guys like, now, like trying to get them to say shit to each other so they can get some entertainment. Like,
there's no drama in there, to be honest, man. This is just really fun. Like, I don't know if you guys watch enough fucking Twitter right now for any Valorant, but everybody just says Valorant Twitter is just amazing. Everybody is able to just shit on each other and still have fun with it. And when it comes down to LANs, everybody's still hanging out around the bar or whatever, or shaking hands and chilling between matches. Like there's no issues whatsoever. I think everybody's just feeding off or feeding the trolls and feeding off feeding the trolls. It's like, hey, I'm just feeding my koi fishes and I'm just walking them swimming around. It's amazing to watch. It's fun. And it's just, again, people are just taking it two by the letter, two by the book. And it's pretty funny how you have all these Reddit detectives start coming out with their own storylines based on certain tweets and stuff like that.
I mean, fine. I mean, that's what Reddit's for, though. Like, Reddit is for. I always love it when like people are like, wow, people on Reddit they just come up with these ridiculous ideas. It's so stupid. I'm like, excuse me, Reddit literally exists for baseless speculation of sports and esports and fans of anything. That is literally the point of Reddit. You can't go on Twitter and be like, oh, I saw this stupid. Okay, to be fair, like. There was some moron that tweeted at me the other day, and I did go off about that. But like Reddit, like you can't be like, I can't believe these people are saying these things on Reddit. Yeah, because they have no fucking accountability. Their avatars all look like the same fucking marshmallow dude. Like, no one knows their real name. That is literally the point of it. It's entertainment. It's like it's fun to speculate about this shit. But I agree. Valorant Twitter is the best. I mean, I personally think that Europe could use some spice, but I remember Hayes being like, yeah, like. I mean, to be fair, we saw a little bit of, it's not in the show, so we probably won't go too deep into it, but we saw like artists, sharing some takes, most of which have been deleted.
Hot takes.
Yeah. So again, like I can't really sort of verify the body of what he was saying. Essentially, he was sort of defending people that were apologizing to a particular analyst in the European scene because they sort of there was a player that stoked up a bit of drama, and the theory is that player was about to get picked up to a large team that was being told to apologize. Europe could use some spice. I think they could still get there. I think, but I didn't feel like, and when I read that thread and when I read artists getting involved, I didn't feel like it was really lighthearted. I didn't feel like that was the kind of thing like when they just get to land and they'd all just chill out. As much as artist is scouse and he's a bit of a larrikin, I was just like, this is kind of uncomfortable to read. I don't know.
It's going a bit too far. He did also just flat out accuse Nisel for cheating as well. So, like stuff like that is kind of like that's the line, and it's great that you went there because I feel like a lot of people are still thinking about Nisel considering his reputation prior. Like that's always going to haunt him because he cheated in previous games. Sorry, but that's kind of how it is. It's not like with the stuff in Counter-Strike at the moment, that's going to happen at some more with more people, no doubt, in Valorant. So. Like, Addis has some funny takes when he's calling other teams just flat out shit and stuff, like on a broadcast. But yeah, the Yinsu stuff is just a whole different ballpark and really just sour taste in everybody's mouth. Nobody comes off happy in that. You think Yinsu's pleased that a player's just flat out quit? No, she doesn't want any of the drama, and neither do any of we.
Yeah, we touched on it. I think that's more than enough for me. Yeah, I think maybe if it was other people that wasn't just artists, in Europe, maybe it's like a bit of back and forth instead of like you're just a cheater, and then like I don't know. So I mean, I do think Valorant Twitter is great. I actually think it's because of the average maturity level and age of the players. I can compare this to Overwatch. There are a small number of Overwatch personalities that talk a bit of trash. Most are scared because fans go fucking bonkers, and they care about that. You know what I mean? I see like a bunch of people in Valorant do it. They don't give a shit what the fans do. Like the reaction, by the way, from the fans is the same, if not worse, in Valorant, right? Like Valorant is pretty toxic, but the players don't particularly care about that or about they don't feel beholden to the consequences. Where in Overwatch, like people literally get like harassed IRL because some fans are just fucking insane. And I think that is something that's characteristic of Overwatch and League of Legends communities a little bit there as well. So. It's not very spicy in Overwatch. We have, the top scene is comprised very heavily of players that hail from South Korea. Some of them talk trash, but a lot of them don't. For some, it's cultural. For some, it's a language barrier. For some, it's purely respect, right? That's just not how they want to conduct themselves. And that's fine. Like no one's going to make them do that. But I think the culture around the game also makes that more unpalatable, and the community just it tends to sort of lash out against that much more than in Valorant, where it's almost encouraged to a degree. So you can argue that's not always positive. You could argue that's not always a good thing. that that a community it does not self-police to that degree. That is, I'm sure people are divided on it. I personally think that Valorant Twitter is better. I think that the scene is more amusing. It's funny. As long as it doesn't cross the line, and in some cases it will, because players straddle the line between what's okay and what isn't okay, and the definition of what is okay and what isn't okay actually changes. Go and watch anything from the 1980s on TV, and you'll see that. So there will always be this kind of friction, but I love the Valorant scene for that reason. It's one of the biggest reasons that I like being a part of it. So
it's a very good sense of humor. Like the DAP stuff is the best stuff. Where he's claiming that the game's too easy because of RNG. Now every time they lose, it's like, oh, the game's not as easy anymore, is it, Daps? And he can't help but laugh at this point because he fucking said it. Like he put himself in that position, and he's gonna get teased for it. But at the end of the day, that's all it is, teasing. Like,
and that's the thing.
It's the best part of it. It's just all tongue in cheek.
Just us as a community, or the people that are following these teams, just have to again understand that what's teasing and what shouldn't bleed into the toxicity of voice chats and stuff like that too, right? And sexism and all that stuff. So let's learn as we go, but let's try to learn quickly than not. Please.
To circle back to what we're talking about, right? It kind of brings up the question of the purpose of scrims, right? You don't want to waste each other's time in scrims by doing ridiculous stuff, but we've seen plenty of rivalries develop as a result of teams going head to head in scrims. What it sounds like from what I can see in this thread, that Sentinels thought TSM were kind of trolling with this 4 Guardian strat. Hayes was like bold-faced, like coming out and saying, I could play this off and be like, oh yeah, but he's like, no, you are better than us. We were trying something. Sinatra didn't seem to accept that, right? I think this is, kind of something that can get sort of misperceived sometimes. And maybe Sentinels responded to what they thought was trolling from TSM by just fucking about. It's hard to say, but it makes me wonder what the value is of scrims in that sense. Where if not scrims can you try this stuff? You can't 5-stack ranked. That's not possible now with players at Immortal and above. So
correct.
Where else do you get to put this stuff into maybe get a sister team or a team that you have a good relationship with that you scrim with regularly, but that can cause problems if both those teams improve too much, and then you have to play against the same team in a grand final.
And even then, like if you're talking about sister teams, it brings in the issue of the whole non-compete kind of thing, where or conflict of interest. If you're like a Cloud9 white or a Cloud9 blue. And sorry, let's not take the Cloud9 blue and white because it's 2 different things. But let's say Cloud9 blue has an academy team and they're practicing against each other. And once we get to the bigger leagues, you can't really have both teams competing against each other, right? And like you said here, Mitch, not only can you not stack 5 players into ranked anymore, but it's also a different scenario when you're stacking 5 players into ranked playing a pug versus players that probably, even at Radiant, we hear from Steel's stream, they don't have the same type of level and capabilities of performing as a tier 2, tier 3 player, or tier 1 player even into Valorant. So when you're looking back at it, it's like the best place to practice it is definitely in scrims, and which is why you had the recent changes that allowed for us to play every single round, all 24 rounds in scrims format, and not to play only first or 13. Because if you're playing just to win, then it negates everything also in terms of practicing scrims. What's the point of playing to win if you're not going to try different types of strategies and different types of play styles and different types of agent composition? Which is why now, again, I think we're going to talk about it later, but maybe that's why sometimes the general population gives so much
credence.
Yeah, to like TSM that comes in with like double smokes or double initiator and be like, what the fuck is this? Why are they not using a Sentinel anymore? And there's a reason why they're doing that, and there's a reason why they're practicing that as well in the scrim setting. So there is definitely a lot of importance into that. I mean, I don't know if you've played anything at a pro level here, Ryan, but I think I could ask you the question and bring it back to you, Mitch. Like, you've played pro COD 4, and I'm pretty sure you know the importance of playing scrims for these matches, where for me it was like great 2 back then.
The amount of times I walked into a LAN after winning every fucking scrim 3 weeks prior just to get sharted on in the semis. It's just, also, I was shit at LAN. That was also my problem. Like, the desk was never high enough, or like the table was
chair was different.
Also, my teammates could actually feel it when I banged the table as opposed to when I was at home, and then that threw them off.
Your FPS is too high compared to home. It's
Dude,
too crisp.
I was shit at LAN. I used to bring a ruler to try and like get everything the same as at home. I just couldn't adapt. I was never meant to be a pro player. But Ryan, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well because we
Yeah,
go
so-
back in the same scenes.
Yeah, I mean, like with TSM especially, because they do some experimental stuff, it's not,
Mhm.
you know, completely different to what we expect. So you got to give credit to TSM there. They don't get to try it out against the best teams. Who are they meant to be trying out? And also
Exactly.
with my small experience sort of doing stuff with teams in scrims for Valorant, if you're in a scrim and you're playing to win the scrim, then you're doing it all wrong. Like it's not about that. I'm pretty sure Sentinels would be more annoyed if they're trying to play up to a team that is just, you know, playing some sweaty Valorant in order to say, hey, we beat Sentinels in
them,
the scrim
yeah.
wars.
Yeah.
Like that's not what they're for. They're meant to practice stuff out. And yeah, if it's TSM versus Sentinels, maybe you want up the ante a little bit. But as far as you're concerned, it's a friendly. You don't have England v Germany in football in a friendly showing everything that they're doing. If they're
Slide tackling each other, biting their
Exactly,
ears off.
right? Like, there is no stock in those games, and therefore, why should TSM try? Like, they don't owe any respect to you. If they want to try Four Guardians or whatever, let them, because that might make you go, "Ah, there might actually be some degree of, you know, niceness to what they're running." I mean, you go over to Fnatic, they were running 5 bookies and 5 judges at some
Yeah.
point. Like, at some point, all of these metas that have been formed, even if you look at Overwatch like GOATs, at some point, they ran with that in Scrim, and the other team were like, what the fuck are these guys doing? And then
Yeah.
suddenly GOATs becomes the meta for a year in Overwatch. It
Yeah.
starts with stuff like this. So you can't blame TSM for at least trying to do something a little bit more, you know, experimental as opposed to trying to play the same Valorant that everybody else is playing at. Clearly, they don't want to do that based off what we saw with challenges. And do you blame them for it as well? It just, you know, chill out, sense.
Well, fuck. Look at Code 7 using stingers back in the beta days, and look at how stingers are being used widely today. So,
Yeah, Robert
I
is
think
a
there's like
pioneer. We know that.
I thought there was some kind of social contract that was kind of agreed to by teams and scrims that the fucking result didn't matter. But every time we go into a LAN, the team's like, no, yeah, we've been winning all our scrims lately, so you know, I think we're rank 1 NA. I don't really, you know, see why it's so hard to believe. You know,
yeah.
it's like, you know, you get some teams when they scrim who treat scrims what they are, and some teams actually maybe less experienced ones that haven't got schlacked enough when it actually comes to the real games because they got a false sense of security. Maybe think that they, you know, are actually there to try and win some sort of brownie points. But if you feel disrespected by what the opponent team is, within reason, mind you, by what the opponent team is doing in scrims, you need to ask yourself why the fuck you're there. You know what I mean? Would you, if you're honestly going to tell me I can't practice against this kind of play style, I mean, still better than fucking queuing with one of your teammates in ranked and hoping to queue with, you know, the rest of them. So I don't know. Scrim bucks don't mean shit for the reasons that we've discussed. I still find it very amusing when people try and use that to sort of justify their opinions, you know, of themselves being heightened. Let's talk. Let's now move away a little bit from the player situation and have a look at formats here, because by some divine intervention, just luck maybe, someone rolled a fucking dice. The European Challengers Tour for VCT has announced a format change, gentlemen. How about you?
Super happy for that. I mean, round to 256 to 128, so it's only one round where it's BO1 and the rest is BO3. Pretty awesome, but I think I'm going to let Ryan speak to it because he's been the one that's been more in the grain and been wanting this for the longest time for his scene out in Europe. So, floor is yours here, Ryan.
I mean, like the main thing that I wanted to bring up but couldn't stomach it, I suppose, is we had that Crower post where he's saying, you know, oh, we missed a bow, we're doing best of ones in
Last
first
year.
strike. And then they do it again for the first part of challenges. Like, surely they would have gone, I don't know if that makes sense. I think this goes to show what the community could do when they come together and kind of go, not in a nasty way of, hey, right, you're idiots, what the hell are you doing? Even though some people would have been like that. But hey, come on, you said you weren't going to do this. The game is all about competitive integrity yet again. And so, you know, right, I'm going to be on this call going, does it make the game more or less competitive? Well, it's best of ones. There's no seeding. It's going to make it less competitive. All right, let's freaking fix this. Let's make this better. You could argue that there's way too many best of threes in some cases. However, I'm not going to, because I value my life, and this is something that, you know, is important for the European scene. But the hope is that this is the first step of many, right? I would really like it if the Challenger Series was double elim. obviously I'd love it if there were more broadcasts, because it gives more opportunities to people as opposed to the 5 that they have at the moment that they may be looking to work with for the rest of the year, which, you know, is part of it. It's not like you look at Counter-Strike and Blast, they're using the same 5 to 7 people. It's just part and parcel of TOs picking up their talent. However, I do think that it would just make the thing a lot better. We said this last week, or at least I did, where you can't really compare how good G2 are in comparison to FPX. Because even though they might face up against each other in some part of Masters, it could be months before we see these guys actually play. We only saw Team Liquid play against G2 in the Red Bull home ground final. That was the first time that we ever saw those two teams properly play up against each other in a full best of 3. So we have one data point on how good G2 is in comparison to Team Liquid. You look at Counter-Strike, for you to decide if Astralis or Na'Vi is the best team in Counter-Strike, you can look at the matches where they've played, I don't know, Big, OG, Vitality, dozens and dozens of times, right? So having double limb, it was so good for the close qualifiers last time for Challengers North America. It would be so good here just to get a better understanding of who the better teams are, who are the up-and-comers, who were starting to fall off a little bit. It helps with the narratives we're talking about with North America, and it would be really nice to have that in Europe. I'm not going to complain too much. Best of 3s is a really nice thing to have, but let's not pretend that there's still more stuff that we can do in the future to just make Europe a lot stronger.
I mean, as a side note as well, I was thinking about this last week. People have said like we'd like to have more broadcasts as well, and I thought back to a bloke called Mitch Leslie saying if you can't pay the casters, don't have the broadcasts. And I'm like, I guess this is what, and I anticipated this, right? That is the downside as well. If always are trying to focus on quality over quantity, then like some things miss out. I saw a lot of people actually who were watching NA VCT complain or just say, hey, I wish more of these games were broadcasted. Now you're seeing the other side of the coin, I think, a little bit. I don't regret a word of what I said, mind you, because that would be, I'm not going to assume that I actually, in reality, had any bearing on any of the changes that were made. I think that's asinine to say that, but there are two sides to the coin here. And I also want to make something clear to people that they might not know is that there are a lot of people, across multiple regions at Riot that work on Valorant competitive esports. There is a global team. Then there are regional teams. There's a regional team for, I think, at least Europe or EMEA and North America. And then there's a global team, right? There are a lot of cooks in the kitchen that have to agree on a format, but before they standardize the format, they have to try things out as well. So, yes, should we have seen some more BO3s straight away in the VCT #1? Yes, especially based on Riot's, or at least Riot's European regional representative, Croa, saying that they missed the mark, right? And maybe, yes, we should have expected a bit more for VCT1, but obviously they're listening, they're making changes. Like, I don't know, people don't understand. Like, you and me as like viewers of Valorant, like we hold a stake in the success of the scene. If we're casters or trying to be casters or we want to be content creators, we hold a stake. But we are majority consumers of this product. The real stakeholders are the players who we often speak in defense of, and the fucking people making the decisions. And that's something I want to be very clear about. Crower did say, no one wants to get this right more than we do. And I believe that. It's not a platitude, because their stake in the success of the esports scene is greater than mine or yours. For players, you could argue that it's more similar because it's a partnership between both of those sides that are trying to make revenue, right? So, I don't think they're trying to fuck this up. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot more to this. It's just really easy for me to get out here and just be like, this is bad. Everyone needs to tell them this is bad to get this change done. It's extremely heavy-handed. It's also performative to a degree as well, from my perspective or our perspective, right? Because we're on a podcast. Well, this is a show. It's a it's about ranting. So, I just want to make it clear that yes, we come up with some very strong opinions, but we need to admit that there are people with greater stakes in this decision making than us, and also greater oversight to a lot of the limitations that they sort of face. That's my disclaimer. We're going to go on with like more inflated hot takes for a little bit. To respond in chat.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, just very quickly, we have rallied against Region Lock. We did do that. I went off about it. We've done that.
I think with that in particular, right? Like what you said is, let's say you got Riot EU making a decision, not going into the whole bank situation with a twit longer, saying we want to use these 5 talent for the rest of the year. We want to harness them because maybe there's a franchise down the line and they're the 5 people that they want. That is fine. That decision alone is fine. That's one of the reasons why I casted so much North America, is because there isn't many opportunities in EU. And even if there are, you've got some really talented people that are focusing on the region a lot harder than I am. But then you have North American or maybe even global Riot decisions region locking the talent. And again, that decision on its own is fine. But the issue is what you're saying with the too many cooks. You have conflicting things happening where, as a European, I can't cast any other region in an official Riot manner other than my own. But this region doesn't want to add any more people, at least from what we've seen, in the future. And it's not like one person has nefariously got a thing against all of the European casters. It's just two parts of Riot making decisions that conflict and affect a good portion of the talent and casters that wanted to get involved in the game for the future, right? It's not like I'm going to go, well, shit, I can't cast anymore. I'm just going to go quit and start casting something else, right? Because, you know, with Hitscan and Valorant, I'm still involved in this game. But for stuff like this, it's more kind of going, hey, Riot, I don't know if you noticed this, but this kind of situation is cooked because of two decisions. Can you, like, try and alleviate it or sort it out or realize, you know, adjust things that you're not completely shutting down some of the talent in a particular region, especially when you want region lock to be a thing to grow certain talent in other regions. At least that's the reasoning that I can understand for having region lock in the first place. So with stuff like that, it's just conflicting things that Riot is saying that we want to go, hey, no, don't do this, please. It doesn't make any sense.
I kind of want to make things clear that if we have
wait, is this the part where Eventually protects his potential job prospects in the future by reneging on anything he said? Is that what's happening? Just
no. Well, actually, I guess so. We'll let you guys have the opinion on that in the end too. But I think the fact for me that we have less broadcasted matches, for example, right now in NA, and less broadcasted matches in EU is not necessarily on the TO. I think it's more that we need something very similar to Counter-Strike Go with GoTV. Because in the end, if you have that available, all the matches will be public, where now, even as a viewer, I could choose to hop directly into the server and watch the broadcast, hop into server and watch the broadcast with the commentators or mute the commentators and just have in-game sounds. And that's going to add a lot more to just everybody to be able to win as a whole. Because as a coach, as an analyst, you're going to be able to watch this matchup even more to develop the strategy for the team. As a viewer, you now have watch parties, you now have the main broadcast, you now have community casters. For the community casters or the up-and-comers, it's, hey, I can now broadcast I wouldn't say necessarily any matchup, but I could broadcast matches that are currently not being streamed on the main channels and put it on my channel so that I could actually build my brand, get the practice in, and hopefully also get noticed. And now you don't have that issue of like, hey, should the TO be paying me for community casting or not when I'm setting all of these matches up for the casters right now? So I think that could be a very big win. I'm pretty sure that will be coming in due time. I hope so, actually, because now that I think about it, I don't think we have that for LCS, right?
Yeah.
So that could be something to be looked out for. But whenever you have the main matches that should be on the main broadcast, for example, /Valorant or /NSG or whatever tournament organizer that pays for that highlighted match, then that match should be blacked out, like we have in Real Sports right now. If a channel currently has a blacked out game, it's only going to be specifically on whatever main broadcast television chain for you to be able to watch that matchup. I think that could be a good way at looking at things. I may be old school about it as well, because if I think about old school, it's about, hey, I have a radio ITG, I have a TSN, I have an X broadcast radio station that's going to have exclusive rights to broadcast this matchup, where now even Riot could sell the broadcasting rights to these organizations or whatnot too. That's thinking down the line, but I think there's potential with a Val TV or something like that everybody could benefit from.
Yeah. All right. I think we're getting long in the tooth on this particular topic.
But did I make sense? Did I back out of my shit? No, I think I just try to find a solution for everybody.
I can respect that. Yeah, I can respect that. I also want to point out as well, it occurs to me now that like there are a ton of commentators that want to work for free. And like even though I've told them what the rate is, they're not going to charge it. That's fine. That's also okay. Like I just want to make it clear, I'm not forcing anyone to charge something. Like I'm probably still going to get hired. You know,
and you got to know your worth.
It makes sense.
You got to know your worth in the end.
I just want to make it. Yeah. Some people were like, is this guy trying to make everyone charge more so he has more of a chance of getting hired? And no, and I can say this with great, you'll see that it doesn't really affect me. You'll see quite soon, actually. I do just fine either way. So I mean, yeah, if there's a world where y'all want to cast for free, fucking okay, fine, you do it. That's fine. Make it more of a hobby. As long as y'all don't say, I I'd rather you did it for free than you doing it for like F all and saying that you charge like, you know, $100 a day just so you can compete or like, you know, put food on the table. Like, yeah, it's whatever. I mean, I casted for free for ages, but that's because there was no organization. I mean, you don't want to get paid? No, it's fine, man. But, yeah, you do your thing. I'm not here to force people to charge anything, but let's move on. Talk about income. Passive income, I guess, for those that have their own lines, but I want to kind of talk about merch in Valorant because I was thinking about this the other night. I'm like, shit, I have so many like esports jerseys. Like I think I have the jersey of every team in the Overwatch League, but I don't wear them ever. They never get worn unless like I'm streaming or like playing in like an Overwatch tournament, for example. I'll like put on my particular jersey that has like, you know, but otherwise like that's just for novelty.
Yeah.
Does anyone wear, you know, like esports branded merch out? Because I think some developers do a great job with their merch, providing it's not too blatant. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's got the best look merch wise? Here's like the ones from BlizzCon last year. I actually copped the one on the right because it was kind of subtle. It wasn't too obvious. It didn't have Winston's face just like plastered on it.
And it's really nice as well. Yeah. I actually have the Valorant hat, which is kind of a bit of terrible merch, if I'm being honest. I can show it off in a second, but it really is the argument. You don't want to just have like Overwatch plastered on there. You want something a bit more subtle that if you're walking around in the street, it doesn't get pointed out like, hey, I'm a big, fat, massive nerd, for example. It's really into Overwatch. But if you pass somebody else that plays the game or plays Valorant as an example, they go, oh, nice, cool hat or cool jacket or whatever.
Yeah.
That's why I get to like wear a lot of snapbacks and stuff.
I bought
but
this.
the merch that's come out for Valorant is it's super nice. It's a good start, and you would expect with the branding and the style and what they've tried to put forward creatively for this game that style is going to be a big important factor, right? You know, like the Phoenix jacket, shoes that they wear. You could hope for it, but I still think it's in the nascent days for Valorant merch right now, and it can certainly be made better.
I like the subtle hints. Right?
Exactly.
I like
Exactly.
subtlety.
That's the thing for me in terms of this type of gear and why I invest and why I buy these. This, for example, came out I think in the summertime, and it was a limited edition where you could pre-order it, and it's not being shipped out until in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
it's
I
like
saw that I was like,
right.
limited edition. I fucking want this thing. So you asked me the question, Mitch. Do I invest or do I buy esports stuff? Fucking yeah, because I love supporting the organization. I love supporting the scene, and I love stuff that actually catches my eye. And like you guys said, it's not about a whole big face of like a phoenix on a hoodie that I want to wear to be like, yo, I'm actually the player of the game. I find that right now, some organizations, Valorant, are doing a very good job in terms of bringing the gaming culture into streetwear, right? Because I was trying to think about it yesterday too. Is like when I'm thinking about the evolution of hip hop and how Run DMC kind of like coined these the superstar shoes into like the culture of hip hop and into the culture of like everyday fashion wear, and you associate that shoe with hip hop and with Run DMC. I feel that certain organizations right now, and for example, Riot, are doing a very good job of associating like Valorant into everyday streetwear that people could just wear and not be embarrassed about it because, you know, as you're a closet gamer or as you're just proud to be a gamer whatsoever, you're still being very fashionable. Do I wear jerseys right now? No. Do I wanted to wear jerseys back in like 10 years ago? Possibly, because it was new. Do I wear the jerseys now at the gym? No, because they're not fucking breathable material. But look at this. I'm supporting Miss Harvey with this shirt right here, with Elevate and her brand. I'm supporting Engine of Beats, which is going to be EDM music that I fully love. I have the Wardell t-shirt. I have the TSM hoodies. I have some Space Station stuff. Nbox is sending me stuff as well. Like, I love consuming the gear because I love supporting the organizations, and they look good. I'm not going to be embarrassed wearing this in the streets.
Let's see.
You can
the
see.
black on
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's subtle enough, but like I think black
better.
on black from distance. Like
Exactly.
it's just the small stuff. Like the logo, you see that, you know, it's Valorant, but it's not super in your face. Hey, I spend all my days playing
But that's
tactical shooters. I know
simp
wearing an
for black
X-Men
on black,
hat, but
dude.
you get it.
I love that. I think if that hat, if it was actually just the Valorant logo and not the actual text, I would fuck with that for sure. I think black on
100%.
black is actually sort of sick.
I love it.
I think there's a fine line with some merch between like novelty and actual sort of remotely fashionable. Like, and look, I think it's really I think it's really subjective. So here's a great example. Liquid drops this Naruto crossover right now.
Yes.
I love anime. I'm not necessarily a Naruto fan, but I like some of these apparel pieces are more just subtle hints to the IP.
Yeah.
Okay, the shirt it's literally is marking Naruto on a t-shirt, so you can sort of decide whether you're into that. But the pants there, it's like it's subtle sort of payoffs, maybe like Easter eggs. I like that. If someone has to double take a little bit to sort of see it, then I'm a big fan. I don't love this anime personally, so maybe I wouldn't feel strongly about wearing it. But there are definitely plenty of there are plenty of types of anime where I'd rep the merch, because they also, it's not just novelty, it's not just weird. Like it doesn't come with the Naruto headband. Like, are you going to wear the Naruto headband out to the store? Maybe not. But are you going to wear this jacket with a 9-tailed fox on it? Sure, why not?
Exactly, because what's cool about this now too is that if I'm wearing this into the streets, the regular person that's not into gaming is gonna be like, oh, okay, this guy likes Naruto, or this guy has a nice anime design on his shirt. But if you're actually walking within the esports scene, that brings up the novelty of being like, holy shit, you're able to cop these 2 jackets that immediately sold out when I actually got into the website. I was trying to buy them. They were sold out. First off, they were sold out. Second of all, they don't fucking ship to Canada. So I was really upset about that too. But I was able to find a friend that lives in the States.
Fucking exist, bro.
I know, man. What the fuck, man? Look at me, like I'm a fucking walking billboard for these orgs.
Guys are just like, you guys are North USA or something, right?
Hey, we're friendly, man. We're friendly. We don't have wars and shit for now. But I actually found a friend that wanted to buy the sweaters for me, and he got the blue and the orange Team Liquid Naruto sweater for me. And he's gonna mail it to me. So I think
that's awesome.
like I was attracted to these things, and again, I'm wearing this into the regular day to day. It's like, oh, my friends will know that it's Naruto. But if I'm gonna wear this on like on the screen right now as I'm broadcasting, or if I'm gonna wear it into a venue, they're gonna be, holy shit, you were able to cop the whole fucking Naruto limited edition type of like crossover with Naruto. I think that's pretty cool. That's novelty in itself within its own scene. So you have something that belongs to the community and belongs to the esport, and that's what I love about these esports merch.
I love the Sasuke joggers are probably my favorite drop from that line, and also like the tie-dye ones with the subtle like hints. It has like Hidden Leaf Village insignia, or like it has like maybe like black and white of some of the characters on there. That shit is For example,
Jogger sold out. The shirt's sold out.
Yep.
But
you know what I loved? I don't know if you saw this. Adidas and Dragon Ball Z did a collab actually with like a bunch of different shoes that were based on like characters. There was like a Goku one, there was a Frieza one, a Cell one. That shit was fucking sick. Now, I don't think I would have gotten all of them. Because I like shoes. I really like the human race, sort of the Pharrell Williams Adidas sneakers. They're some of my favorites. I have like the red, white, and blue ones. And I like my Yeezys and stuff like that. I have a few pairs.
I have Yeezys too, and I bled on them.
Yeah, dude, unlucky, bro. So, they get dirty, to be fair. They also
I spilled coffee on them, man.
They're not true to size. I made a mistake and bought a pair of Yeezys that was just crushed my feet, and I wore them for far too long because I was vain. But yeah, here it is. Nice job. Look, the one at the front. This is like, it's like the silhouette is NMD, right? And I love the NMDs.
Yes,
it's based on Shenron.
Yeah,
fuck yeah. This is
actually really dope.
I mean, yeah, so I think there's a place for this, and there is plenty of crossover between streetwear and pop culture and anime.
Exactly.
And stuff like that.
Like so esports has now become pop culture. That's what I love about it. Sorry, Ryan. And one more thing is, like, I'm actually very close to buying even Ninja's fucking time in shoes from Adidas. Like, I love those shoes. They look super nice. And again, to support Ninja. As much as people give flack to Ninja, by the way, I'm gonna say that Ninja is a fucking awesome person for this community. Like, the amount of tweets that come out from time to time is like, yo, I promised that I was going to fucking drop $1,000 if you're going to clutch this. Here's $1,000. And the guy's going to buy a new CPU with it, or a GPU or whatever. Like, Ninja is so good and involved in this community. And I hate that people give him so much flack for like the whole accusing critical or just being Ninja himself as like a whiny guy when he's streaming. Like, fuck, man, let's give some love to Ninja, man. He's a fucking awesome dude.
I mean, come on. People love Steel, but Steel is his voice chat like, great job, guys. And then Ninja's my team is shit.
Yes, it's true.
I swear so much I can't even use a beat button properly because I forgot to beat the second swear word in a row.
It doesn't have the impact,
No, well, either way, also some players are thinking about their own merch line, right? We talk about like individual branding. Get Right's a great example of someone who's working on branding, but Scream put together his own sort of merch collection. I had a look, and some of it's pretty sick. You know, like what's his branding? Well, the guy's obviously, you know, he's the one tap master. You know what I mean? That seems like his brand. Like this logo here is. I mean, look, I'm not over the moon about this headshot machine sort of triple, you know, crosshair kind of idea, but you know, like he's got some branding. It's not just sort of generic. I think that he might be working with the same people I am. I'm not actually sure, but you know, this is the kind of way that you know, you as if you have a brand, you can monetize that, right? Like it's a way of developing some sort of passive income, like that. So yeah, that's what your boy's done. Ubermerch.gg, motherfuckers, check it out. I've been trying to learn and understand how this all works, right? Like I would not look at what I'm fucking wearing. I would not call myself the father of modern streetwear fashion, right? I don't. I'm not. I wear shit that
call it avant-gardist in French.
Yeah, sure. But so I I may be the only commentator who's ever been vain enough to release their merch line, but it's pretty standard stuff. But what I want to do is I want to understand, like, you know, what as time. No, I didn't design this stuff. I sent my graphical assets over to a design people, and they didn't design anything. They just slapped them on shirts. So in the future, I said to them, "We're definitely going to design some pieces, right? Because I love like training and going to the gym and stuff. I want to get like active wear stuff in there, and you know, make content that's sort of, I don't know, you know, it's like content creation. It's the same thing, like stuff that makes sense that people actually, you know, want to wear. I don't know. We'll find some. I want to get like a gold, like a shiny gold shirt because I wore one on a broadcast once. It's all going to be novelty stuff though again. But like I said, there's a fine line between like stuff that people want to wear out, and then the kind of person that wants to wear something novelty or something that's a bit more fashion aligned. There's function and form, and there's all these things to consider. But I think that Valorant can make they can just murder the game. They've got so many marketable personalities and characters inside their game who all have a really distinct style of fashion. And I don't know if you saw it recently, but like the anime style skins that were teased recently. Like if you're on Split and you're in Defender Spawn and you look to the left, there's like a parlor, and inside there's like a huge like cardboard anime cutout of Reyna, and there's like little Funko Pop looking things of a few of the characters, and it looks like that has been sort of developed into skins now. Those sort of like anime representations of like Killjoy, of Reyna, and stuff like that, which is going to be fucking awesome. So I'm looking forward to that.
Seen as you were shilling, youtube.com/hitscan if you want to see that and all that stuff in there. But yeah, like
I don't have my own shit. Before, like, not yet.
You've got Animal Crossing makeup. You've got stuff like Simpson shoes and stuff as well. It's just some of the stuff that we're getting to this flat as an example. The gym shots that I wear the Lucio logo on it, like. Yeah. So long as you move away from like the Fanatics Overwatch League jersey kind of stuff, where it's very much like a jersey with a logo on it and you got the name on the back with a number, that's getting very outdated very quickly. Yeah. And I still think there's importance to have that in an actual like LAN event, for example. But you need to have some sense of creativity and let these teams create what they want, as opposed to everybody has to have their logo there. It has to be the same dimensions, and every jersey looks the same. Different logos and different colors.
And 100 Thieves is another organization I think that are pretty good in terms of doing their apparel line and stuff like that.
How do we not mention them? Yeah,
but the new skin, nice hit scan. There you go, guys.
The other one's really good. Like the melee for the Celestial skin, which is another video you can find on youtube.com/hitscan, is probably the best melee they've ever added into the game, bar none.
And here's the other thing too,
so
though.
Good.
That I think now we're talking about merch and stuff like that as well. But I even think that now esports has its own identity with the players as well. I mean, if you're looking at, I think it's epics.gg, right? They started making trading cards that are in different rarities, like the commons, the holos, the rarities, and the signature cards for CS:GO. So now if people even want to collect like a Stewie 2K or a Glaive or a Nafly, for example, they're able to collect these cards from that website too. So I think now even players are starting to have like their own type of like vanity type of cards and stuff like that too that people could collect. So I really like the direction of where esports is currently going in 2021 in terms of like building that fan base and building the culture and making it a lot more acceptable. Back then when I started, I thought to be able to make it acceptable is that we need to have esports on regular television so that people could finally accept it from the common grounds. But in the end, I'm actually pretty happy that we have our own niche community that's still really fucking big, but everybody's able to consume with that and be proud about that esports community.
We don't go to them.
Exactly.
You're talking to someone who was on Disney XD and ESPN and fucking hated it. They come to us. Right? That's how this shit works. We are at the point now where we just do what we do, man. Like
Exactly.
what we do is already compelling.
You want it, pay us for it.
Yep. Esports is already fucking awesome. You know, we don't need to like go crawling to mainstream networks and stuff like that.
I've experienced it with DirecTV with fucking CGS, and that was fucking shit. So
okay, I mean that's a whole other kettle of fish. I mean, we need to throwback episode and talk about that. Okay, if you're tuning in, you're wondering at what point we're going to talk about Valorant. I promise you, maybe we might discuss it after the break. We're going to talk about some roster moves in North America. We're talking about VCT NA and Masters coming up. Stick around. That's all happening on the other side of the break. Welcome back to Valoranting, ladies and gentlemen, a professional ranting show. Finally, on to the more substantive portion of this episode, because we had plenty of roster news this week, as we tend to do in a scene that is as transient as Valorant. So let's not waste too much time and dive in. EG obviously recently formed a co-ed roster that shows some promise, has announced that Jimmy Lin will be the head coach. Now, Vansili, there's history here, right? This is, as this tweet would indicate, this goes back a bit.
Exactly. I just love the fact that, like Jimmy says here, it's full circle. By the way, he looks fucking handsome for still being like 35, 36, while he still looks chiseled and everything. I look like a fat motherfucker still. Still need to work on that. But that said, it's cool that he came back full circle, because if you guys didn't know, 15 years ago, before Evil Geniuses was Evil Geniuses, it was just Evil Genius. And it was like a Canadian team and not even an organization. And Jimmy Lin was one of those that also was came up with Jaguar at some point as well. But the big names that you think about is Matt Stevenson, Scotty Beckel, Black Panther, and all that. Nonetheless, it's nice that he's coming back. We speculated that he was going to be the coach for Team EG. Great coach, I think. He did a lot with Team 2D with their last dance for the Valorant scene. And I think in due time, it's going to be great results that we're going to see from EG. This is something also that I wanted to segue into, is that, guys, don't worry about what's happening right now for all these new orgs that are forming or like teams that are, or players that are being picked up. I don't expect any good results from any of these teams. And I'd start to be worried, like maybe around Masters 2 or Masters 3.
Okay, yeah. So plenty of time, plenty of runway in here. So I don't know what to expect from Jimmy Lin. He predates me by quite a long margin, but I was a huge fan of EG's COD 4 team. So I that org has always been
with Rob Wiz.
Yeah, with Rob Wiz, with Nabor. I mean, yeah, that's why when I saw Rob Wiz was playing Valiant, I was like, "You're fucking kidding me, bro! This is crazy." The guy's a gamer.
Yep.
Speaking of sort of another addition here, Renegades obviously have made changes to their roster. Bergie departs, and Stronglegs with the most impeccably chiseled jaw I think I've ever seen.
Everybody's so sexy, man. What the fuck?
I know this guy. I mean, let's not maybe just objectify Stronglegs, because obviously a very, very competent player, and plays a lot of Sky, particularly.
Yes.
We'll get a chance to maybe talk a bit about that in a bit. We can do it now. I've never seen someone who looks so confident and rehearsed on their guiding light placement.
Yes.
I mean, he looks so, even RNG kind of got dookied on. He looked like a great addition to this team.
Yeah, I think with Renegades as well, it's one of those ones where it's going to take time. I think maybe there were a little bit more expectations on RNG doing well, considering they got to the first Strike main event, but it seems that they have dropped off a little bit. It was pretty comprehensive from NV, but certainly not a bad look for Renegades to get this far anyway. And I do think, with all of the conversation about info stabbing, high contact, that luminosity playstyle, Sky is such a good option against that, because it means that you can use the flash to gain information from a safe position. It will call when it actually connects onto an enemy. You know that there's somebody lurking. Say if your crash is here, you send off a guiding light over there. You can gain information and know to work off of it. I mean, this is just impeccable stuff, really. Of course, it's not going to work all the time, but it's a nice idea from Renegades.
Yeah, I think even not talking about the NV versus Renegades matchup itself, but just talking about Stronglegs, is I think he was actually finally spotted when he was playing with, I think it was KP and all them, right? Not too sure if it was the right team, but nonetheless, he started in-game calling versus Sentinels, where they actually put a pretty good matchup versus them. Of course, they lost, but they still put up a good fight. And and Stronglegs was actually calming that, and he was streaming it, so people had an idea to be able to watch him, follow him, and see his coaching and also in-game leading abilities, because he also had coaching roles in the tier 2 scene. But now, again, another one of those players that in the CSGO world didn't have their chance to play at a high level in tier 1 of North America has the chance now to showcase their spotlight, or showcase their skill rather, in Valorant, and are able to do so because he still played a pretty decent game.
Yes, I also think that Mel from Cloud9 Blue credited him with some of the coaching that occurred on that roster as well for a time. I'm already a fan of this guy.
100%.
The guy comes in as an, like, remember Renegades lose Berkey, did a lot of the calling, and I think that, you know, Strong Legs is definitely marketed as an IGL.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see what this team. I think he also ended up playing. Was it Omen or Sova in that series? Maybe
Omen, yeah.
Yeah, played a bit of Omen there.
All
So
three of them over the tournament, yeah.
I
They also
love
lost their coach as well, right? So that's another like good thing to throw Strong Legs in for, because Coach J went past just noon. Where did he go anyway? Because he was like, "Oh, I'm going to some new opportunity."
It's a brand new org. So it's kind of like an Equinox kind of thing where it's like a brand new organization that comes into the scene. There is actually already the announcement of Berkey and recently into that organization. So right now for Coach J, they're still going to announce later on who's going to be playing for that team. The team is not ready yet for Challengers 1 and Challengers 2, of course. That's why we didn't see them.
Sure.
But potentially for Challengers 3. So that's the latest rumor.
I found, on a side note, I found Berger to be really well spoken and quite
100%.
astute. So yeah,
100%.
I also great hair. So I look forward to seeing what he does. This, we kind of already knew about this, and this was maybe part of Anbox's woes this previous week, but they bench Poach. Poach says, I've been benched, and I'm sort of, you know, free to look at other options. Am I crazy for thinking that Poach was one of the most interesting parts of this team? I know he wasn't maybe like a power fragger like a boy or Android or Yaster, but I mean, he was playing the Sova, he's playing the Viper, and, you know, really pushed or tried to push the boundaries of what Viper could do. We saw him play Viper on Split as well. I thought this guy was really quite a compelling individual.
I think it was a great addition. Sorry, Ryan, to Nbox at that point. So I feel that the change to have Rebo in right now and try out for Nbox stems deeper into the strategy right now for the team, because Nbox still look pretty decent. They still look on the up and up. They still have Android and Ye that are able to carry this team on their back to be able to get the results that they want. But again, we'll talk about it in a bit in terms of strategy. But I think Poach being benched, hopefully he's going to find a new team soon. I'm sure there's going to be organizations knocking in at the door, knocking on his door, because again of the results that he's able to have positively with the Nbox roster. So I wouldn't be necessarily worried for Poach. It's more like what's going on behind the scenes for Nbox.
I think it's always really difficult when you're an IGL that plays a lot of Sova as well, because Sova is such a pivotal role for a team. Certainly in Europe, I can name a number of examples. People like Bonka for Guild, even God B, one of the most well-known IGLs from Counter-Strike in Europe, playing the Sova for Big. Often he won't get double digits when it comes to frags, and it's not always about that, but you still expect that role to have some modicum of aggressive impact, which was the main weakness, I suppose, for Poach. The issue is that you look at this team with Rebo, they looked even more lost than they usually were. Granted, they were playing up against teams like 100 Thieves, so that's a given. But I do think that what Poach does lack in the agency and aggression when it comes to the mechanical skill that he has, he makes up for being the IGL. A lot of the strategies that they literally pioneered for maps like Split, with the Viper, with the A executes. The issue for me is that we haven't seen it elevate or evolve since before even First Strike. And yeah, First Strike was a bit of a difficult one for Unbox, considering Poach was literally hospitalized and Warden had to come in and play for them as a stand-in. But still, even then, with like Winter Championships, all that kind of stuff, we haven't seen Unbox really rise to the potential that they could have.
Well,
I think I'd prefer them with Poach than without, but there's going to be a lot of recency bias. You watch one series that Rebo's in, he does just as poorly as Poach would have done frag-wise. So I think it's easy to kind of go, oh yeah, Poach was better before. But
I mean,
I guess we need to see
he's
how
a
it's
different player. I mean, Rebo comes in, he plays Cypher, so Seb now moves over to the Omen, as far as I understand.
That's the thing, yeah.
And then, so the thing is that, I mean, much like Renegades, right? This is another roster now with an IGL that comes in from the outside. I think Rebo was like a player, he's like a two-way player coach kind of thing. I think that was what was sort of spoken about. So
yeah.
Okay, so
it's weird. Because even if he goes as a coach, like if he's trying out right now as a coach, why, or potentially as a coach, why would he play as an in-game leader right now? Why wouldn't they just leave Poach onto the roster and have him just
refuse to play? I mean, who knows?
Exactly. Right. So they're that's why I'm saying it could go deeper than that right now. But But like you said, it was a totally different end box too. Seb had to play Smokes. Boy is the one who was playing I think Cypher at some point. Oh no, sorry. Boy was the one that was playing Silva because Rebo comes in as a Cypher. So nothing looked good for Endbox at that point. They were all over the place because you're just plugging and playing players into different roles, trying to play the roles based on a strat that they're comfortable with a new in-game leader that has to call a brand new team for him, right? For Rebo. I think that's the bigger overarching picture that you have to pay attention to more than the scoreline, which is why I said up to Masters 2 and Masters 3 is where I would start getting more concerned of what direction Andbox is trying to go with this addition or triad of Rebo.
I mean, you best
not
believe
only Unbox, but T1, Cloud9, Evil Geniuses. There's
That's what I'm
like
saying.
half a dozen teams that is like,
Dignitas,
you got to leave them in the oven.
SSG.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And some of them are on the up and up, right? I think Dignitas is a really good example of kind of like, right now we've got something going with this team. This could be a potential big hitter. Even Gen G has leveled up their skill, which is something I guess we could touch on in a bit. But yeah, I do feel that it's very easy to go, Rebo did as poorly as Poach, therefore the move doesn't make any sense. But there's a lot of mitigating factors, especially when you're talking about an IGL and communication in the game, which obviously you can't see on a scoreboard.
Like what does Rebo bring his own protocols, or does he use the structures that existed previously in Andbox? Is it a combination?
That's what we don't know.
You never know any of this stuff, you know. And I'd love to know. Like maybe he brings some new ideas to the table. That sometimes is a selling point for IGLs, is that they have like ideas or like insights from IGLing previous rosters with different players. Let's move on to obviously the new acquisition for T1. Everyone wants to know where Brax and AZK have gone. We can't answer that. Curry, though, comes into this lineup and plays. We saw him playing sort of like a bit of
Sentinel, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sentinel Viper. I think
Viper as well on Icebox.
We saw him play on Icebox.
Yeah.
So we obviously don't know too much about what to expect from this team. I think that T1, they changed 2 players, right? Automatic and Curry both come in here, so like that's you've turned things upside down essentially. But this is what we saw mostly from Curry during their matchup against Headshot Percentage, and I wouldn't say it's the most compelling style. I mean, at least he put the Viper wall down before going back to spawn.
Just looking at T1 overall, it was just a little bit, again, another one that's all over the place. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later on. We're going to focus on VCT NA, but if we just want to focus solely on Curry, I think it's also trying to focus on Automatic, right? I think he was the most, because Curry wasn't really announced in his roster yet. It's really Automatic that was announced last week in terms of like the biggest and latest addition, to the team. But now hearing that Brax and AZK kind of fell off and left the roster, then they were scrambling pretty much for a 5th. And who's the other one that they could bring in? Probably somebody like Curry that play with Triumph, that play with Chaos, that's with all of these new bloods that are coming in from CSGO, like the Vanities and the Leaf and whatnot.
There it is.
And even the MCEs, right? Yeah, he stayed in spawn for 40 seconds to get a kill. And that was his role in Icebox pretty much. But yeah, we're definitely going to talk about this strat a little bit later on. But overall, I think you got to give T1 some time.
I will say that, I mean, Spider looked really good on the Jets. So, some changes there for T1, but we can sort of start jumping into the meat and potatoes of this a little bit more now as we examine the NA VCT. V-Flight, yes, he stayed in spawn the whole round. He did that on multiple rounds, actually. He slightly changed his area in spawn. So it wasn't the same spot. It was like 2 meters to the left or the right. So he was, varying up quite nicely. He shut down the lurk, so whatever. Let's talk about the open qualifiers.
He was literally a Killjoy turret. He was literally typecasting himself as a Killjoy turret.
He's a Killjoy turret that was able to pass the Turing test somehow. That's basically how that went. Let's talk about our open qualifiers here, because we got some banger matches this week in VCT NA. Let's have a look at the bracket as it sort of stands here. So this year's one half of the bracket, right? We know the 100 Thieves and FaZe Clan get through, but let's look a little closer, right? 100 Thieves get past Ghost Gaming and Andbox. NRG fall 2-0 to Andbox. We see FaZe Clan do what FaZe Clan does best by dropping maps to arguably weaker teams in order to, eventually squeak a win out against BBG. You see Spot up there is, still trying to find its way into tier 2. So some crazy games. Well, let's have a look at the other one now as well. And Vancilla, you can talk us through some of the results we saw here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at all the teams in NA that kind of participate into this, the big one that you want to think about are the ones that didn't qualify, which is basically the T1s and the not HSP. They lost HSP, but the T1 and the Dignitas of the world in NA. But when you're looking at everybody else that's participated into this bracket, everything seemed pretty normal. I don't think we've seen that many upsets. I do like the fact that the Equinox Esports and Rise went to a 2-1 for Rise when Rise recently picked up Poised and somebody else into the roster, right? So there's been some changes in that team, but we haven't had a chance to watch enough of the Rise and Equinox Esports, which again goes back to the conversation we had as to unfortunate that we don't have an opportunity to watch all of these games. Beast Coast and Envy. I mean, Beast Coast had Fraud that recently left T1 that was coaching for that lineup. I think Beast Coast had Kohler in there at some for the roster. I think in that team playing forward.
Is JMO playing on Beast Coast, or am I getting mixed up now? It's
no. So JMO joined United.
Decop.
Yeah, he
it
went
was
to
Decop.
United.
Decop, exactly. Oh man, that was a sad matchup, man. Decop went like 0-12 for a whole half as Reyna on Icebox. Now that you mentioned his name, it's like fuck, man. It kind of sucks because as much as we want to harp to say like the stats don't really matter that much.
You got 1 kill on Icebox.
Exactly. When you're actually Reyna for the strat and you take attacker side first, I think if not mistaken, then you want to have the type of like Thief Thief plays Jet on that map. But if it's going to be like Shot Up or Sinatra, for example, to be able to get into the A site and be that turret on that 410 box or the maze box, he didn't have that chance. Beast Coast definitely got rolled by Envy, but I think it's more credit that you want to give to Envy throughout this whole series or even in the tournament to be able to have such a dominating bracket just like 100 Thieves.
Ryan, Dignitas and T1 both failed to make it into the top 8. For one of these teams, it's maybe more shocking than the other, but since Superman's departure and Ryan's acquisition, Dignitas have been looking really quite competent.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was a really good series against TSM because we saw what TSM have to offer as well. He had double controller. It was super exciting to watch. Rara, which, as Sam has been teasing me in chat, is a pet name that my family have given me because my brother wasn't able to say Ryan when he was like 2. So Rara is like the family name for me, I guess. And he popped off, and then Ryan's on the roster as well. How could I not support this team, right?
Yeah.
I think this is a really good look for them going in the future. And honestly, from watching this TSM game, I wanted to see more of this against Gen G when they matched up. The thing is that we did see it, other than that final round, which I guess we'll go over in greater detail. But this Dignitas roster is genuinely exciting, and I can't wait to see more of them. They finally got what they need, and this could potentially be a tier 1 team in the future.
Yeah. The only sad part for me is to see the departure of Superman actually in this roster, right? Because when it was Echo 8 with the Crossfire players, with all of them together with Aaron, it's like, holy shit, man. Like, it's going to be nice to see now another set of players from a different game, from a different esports. There were champions in Crossfire playing into Valorant, and unfortunately they like imploded, kind of like the High Grounds going into their own storylines. But at least some players are still finding success, like Aaron currently with the XSET. And if I'm talking about High Ground, I'm talking about your boy Dre with LG. Now, Superman, hopefully he finds something new or a team that fits his playstyle, because he was one of those players that we talked about him a lot, how good he was as Brimstone, even towards the beta days or the beta days of the game. So the game comes out where Brimstone gets these buffs, then hopefully one team will find value into Superman at that point.
Interesting. Sam obviously playing only Raze during that series, and look decent at Ascent, on Ascent at times. Although the way he hits the A side, he like double blast packs straight into like CT and tries to hit the show star. It's like a little telegraph, but I like that aggression from Dignitas. And yeah, I think I think TS. We'll talk about it later. I think TSM had a brutal run. They had to go up against some really quality teams. You saw that last round where Hayes just puts his own sky smoke down and gets to show off a little bit of his aim there, and that's the way it goes. I think Wardell kind of ruined him. Wardell is the kind of player though that really punishes looser teams. I think if you don't have teams with protocols or good trade structures, Wardell will sort of pick you apart pretty easily, and I think that's why TSM generally do quite well against these sort of teams that are still trying to find their style, or teams that are playing super aggressive and trying to take opponents by surprise, because Wardell's consistency allows him just to sort of punish individuals that overextend time and time again. What the heck happened with T1 though? We got to see a little bit of a clip. We didn't get to see much of it, right? We saw a clip of Curry sitting in spawn. Right? That's not the whole story of this match. What on earth goes wrong for this team?
It's the struggle to find the identity again, like I mentioned before, because like losing AZK and losing Brax, when we're actually like a lot of people are saying, hey, why is Spider always playing Omen? We should actually put him on a duelist, and we actually saw some good results when he started playing Raze and started playing Phoenix. And then suddenly we have Skadoodle that benched himself from a Sage role, a Sova role, to be able to come back as a Jet operator and looked fucking amazing in First Strike as a Jet op versus 100 Thieves. And now you get into this where now look at it right now. Skadoodle is playing a fucking Breach. Jet is being played by Spider, where yeah, he's able to do some kills here and there, but not necessarily that much of an impact for T1 as a whole. Automatic, I think at some point was still trying to figure out what game he was playing. I think it was even actually, yeah, like looking at that, he's still too new coming in from CS:GO into Valorant. So I think it's just like, yes, they've not necessarily hit rock bottom, but because they're such a brand new team, they could only really do better at this point. But it looked like almost at some point a very old T1 where when Days first joined the roster and was very slow play and like have a guy just work an extremity or just stay there the whole time. And that's again, as we're laughing about what Curry did on Icebox. So I think that I'm expecting a lot more from them in Challengers 3, which definitely will happen. But I'm hoping that they're going to be able to be at their top form like they were before they imploded, getting into Masters 2.
I mean, Exalt goes insane in that round. Never seen
that's
a
what I
player
was gonna
Exalt
say.
before, right?
Mhm,
I think they end at plus 24 in terms of KD, and they're obviously playing like Jet Raze. They're playing super aggressive here. Something about
Yeah,
the way T1 were playing just allowed Exalt to fucking farm
abuse it.
them
Yeah.
over and over. I think Exalt comes out, yeah, like this guy gets 2 4Ks and he gets 8 3Ks, over the course of this series. Like that is
Mad.
that is 10 multi-frag scenarios. And I'm not even counting the 2Ks that he gets. In fact, it's 17 multi-frags if you count 2Ks, 3Ks, and 4Ks. Sorry, like if you let one player fuck on you that hard, and then it was still a close-ish series despite that.
Yeah.
This guy's got mad potential. What a great way to showcase yourself by just dominating a veteran roster or brand like that.
I think that Josh.
Sorry, go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, Josh RT has just got a really good habit of putting together
Yes.
teams like that as well. So, like, the credit is deserved. It's just a team that had solid fundamentals, and T1 just couldn't match them. They're still changing around musical chairs, the roles and agents that they're playing on. So there's going to be no surprise that there's no sense of consistency or cadence to their play. It very much feels that they're just riffing a lot. And if you've got Spider as well, maybe like language differences again could be
Exactly.
more of an issue, right? So it's always going to be tricky for T1. My concern is without the likes of Fraud, Frax, and AZK, at least with that team when they looked bad, you knew that there was potential to bounce back because we saw that so many times in previous tournaments. Now I'm not too sure with this line.
And that's why I was going to add into like the language barrier kind of thing. It's like if you're going to have Spider play Jet and then you're going to have Skadoodle playing Breach, and we're looking at the Vision Strikers type of strategy of the flash and dash, like how good is their communication between each other to be able to execute that kind of gameplay? Which is why at sometimes you see Spider kind of try to do like some individualistic plays, off timings on certain things when he's getting into the map. I think that it has to go back to some point where, unfortunately, not to diss Spider at that point, but you need, if you're gonna have Skadoodle stay as Breach, then have like his fucking teammate that when he won a major in CS:GO with, like a fucking automatic go as a Jet opper, and then put Spider back on a Raze. Like he looks so fucking good on Raze on Bind. I think individualistically, you could play somebody like Raze by yourself and create that space on your own and not focus too much on trying to coordinate stuff with your team. Like once it's going to be called like, okay, let's hit into the site. He understands it rather, and he knows the role that he has to make.
I want to say that I'm pretty sure Spider, his English is fine. I mean, he had to play with literal Swedes for so long and had to try to find a way to understand them when all speaking English. So I don't think that's it at all. I also think he was a top 3 Widowmaker player in the Overwatch League. So like, it's not, the role of a sniper is very natural.
Yeah.
Very natural to him. Everyone wants to see Skadoodle play the operator and play the Jet.
Of course.
I mean, there's some variation to be had there. I think Curry looks like, I don't know. What, obviously Days, is doing a lot of the IGLing here. I don't know to what degree Curry gets involved because obviously, we're looking at a player who plays the Cypher and the Viper, sorry. So he's doing a lot of backstabbing, maybe some lurking, playing the off site and trying to sort of sell fakes or create opportunities there. So I wonder how Curry fits into the calling structure of this team and how information is relayed there. But people overstate language barrier, especially when there are players that have been playing with like Westerners for so I don't think Flash and Dash is also like players literally say ping pong to each other to try and organize a double wide swing. So you don't need to, you don't need to write, you don't need to give a fucking Rosetta Stone to your teammates to have them understand when you want to go and shoot some heads. So
look, I just want to
go. Basically,
I just don't want to discredit T1 as much as people are going to give him shit for a poor result.
Their structure is fucked.
Yeah,
the structure's fucked right now. There are no structures right now. I mean, they lose coach, they lose veteran players that were responsible for upholding the framework and their protocols. They don't exist right now. So we're not being hard on them. We're just like, hey, it's like, here's a building that used to be standing here until the fucking cornerstone got taken out and all the supports did and it fell. Bad house, you fell down, you bad house. Well, no.
It's very easy as well. Like, even look in chat, it's very easy to like football manager this team and go, oh, this person should be playing this. What if that player doesn't want to play that agent, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of one of the things that happens. And now you don't really have a team made up of ex-teammates that play together and want to have a second go at something like this again. Now you've got this very like dysfunctional lineup. It clearly has issues to the point that the coach says that he's leaving for ethical reasons. Like, what on earth is going on at that point? That becomes a thing.
That's why in the end, man, Danny, if you're listening or whatnot, Fraud, like, I still want you on the show so we can fucking put this to rest because
hash it out.
Exactly. I've reached out to Fraud last week. He wants to wait a few weeks. Hopefully in a few weeks we're gonna get him on, and then we'll get his side of the story of what the fuck happened with T1.
I'm gonna say it again. I have seen no reason to think that T1's current management has any idea what the fuck they are doing. Yeah, you drop 2 players from your team. You know what I love about this? It was mentioned on another podcast as well, in the Plat Chat one. It's like, you drop Brax, and the coach, literally is like, Brax is the best player in NA. You drop AZK, the guy literally says, he's the best teammate you can ask for. So why the fuck did you drop them? Like, it's just fucking bullshit. So first of all, like, bro, like, oh my God. Esports, like, there are plenty of scoreboard Stevens out there on Reddit and stuff like that, but they're not dumb. They're just misguided. You cannot drop players and then literally jerk them off on the way out the door about how fucking players are. Maybe you want to help their future prospects, so you don't want to affect their brand by dropping them. But like, I have no reason to think you guys have any fucking idea what you're doing with T1. I've seen evidence of that in Korea. I see evidence of that now.
But I also think maybe it's also mutual departure, right? As much as you're trying to fix things or whatnot, it's just like, well, maybe it comes down to Brax and AZK wanting to be with Fraud. You could speculate that as well.
If it was Fraud's departure mutual, he said fucking ethical reasons. How mutual? I guess it's mutual.
So,
it's like,
so I'm saying it's maybe not as mutual between Fraud and T1, but it could be mutual between AZK and Brax with T1 because they want to stick with Fraud.
What evidence do you have to suggest that outside of
just being a Reddit speculator in terms of like, if Brax is leaving and he even has a part in the video where he's thanking T1 for everything that they've done for him, and T1 is saying
obliged to do that.
If he's obliged to it, but even if they're saying that he's the best player in North America and that AZK is the best support player in North America, the best teammate you could have, then yes, maybe it's not to break the brand, but at the same time, if they could have mutually agreed onto something, is probably the common factor that's the elephant in the room, that Fraud departed that roster a week prior due to ethical reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's good faith to not shit on an org when you depart.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's good faith does not necessarily mean that your reasons for like leaving were not justified or like you don't sort of bear any ill will. So this will come out.
Yeah.
I hope that this will come out. I hope we have some conversations about, and I hope it's a teachable moment about like how veteran personalities with tons of experience fit into rigid structures or chains of command or deal with different personalities. It's such a fascinating study to me. I saw it in Overwatch. The idea of coachability was thrown around so much, and it's produced, or coachability or lack thereof has produced such different looking teams and performances and results. So table this one for now.
To support T1 right now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but first of all, they kind of suck. And I don't know what their management's doing. Like, I don't feel like their management is dealing with the community in good faith by just PRing the shit out of their answers.
Yeah,
like, this is the whole reason why we don't trust like sports execs coming into esports and fucking it up, because it's not authentic. We want authentic communication from the teams that we support. We don't want this shit.
It definitely could be a bigger picture than everything that we're speculating right now, but I think that if it's going to be management taking care of the team and what player that they want in the team and who's going to do what, if it's the management that decides it, hopefully it's going to be a very similar result to what Immortals are doing right now, where the coach and the GM kind of have per se, and are able to move these pieces around to allow the players to play under their regime rather, and it works out well for them. So if T1's looking to be around that same type of like school of thought, then hopefully they're able to come out with the same type of success.
All right, we're about to clock 2 hours of us just talking about nonsense.
Fuck!
So let's try and roll on here. Let's start with the teams that actually got success. All right, let's look at some upsides here. First of all, I can't believe I'm saying this. Gen G qualify for the close qualifiers with a huge victory over TSM. This team looks revitalized. They look rejuvenated, and looks like they found a bit of pace. We see that, especially on Ascent, I felt like, we saw Gen G use mid a lot more. We kind of talked about this team being a little bit stale and too formulaic, too easy to read, and too easily overwhelmed by aggressive teams. But Gen G are the ones here that look like they bring a new brand of aggression that I haven't seen from these guys before. They look like a new team.
I genuinely think that like a lot of it can be accredited to the coach MC, who of course was from KS before. But I don't even think that does justice how early on this Gen G team looks. He's only been there a couple of weeks at this point now. And so I feel that this Gen G team can improve beyond it. But every player was playing with confidence. Even players like GMD and Michael, however you want to pronounce it, they looked a lot more sure of themselves. Whereas before it was very much, I need to make sure that my recon bolt goes out onto the site, otherwise we're not going to be able to execute properly. But again, as soon as the defender flanks around the corner to play this high contact playstyle, they shit their pants and it all falls apart. That has been the story from Gen G since the literal beginning. But even with the addition of Sean, with Gusta, who of course is about to pop off in incredible fashion, everybody seems to be on the same wavelength, and I do feel that TSM weren't the best team in this series, but TSM still looked very good. People should not be mad at the fact that TSM lost this series, because Gen G played the living shit out of it.
Correct. That's exactly it. And especially when you're looking at this 2 versus 1 in the end, that was just fucking insane from Kusta. But overall, when you're looking at this matchup, as you say, Mitch, like, you can't believe you're saying it that Gen G's qualified. I love the fact that you mentioned it, because Gen G has been in a spot where they're looking for, just like TSM, looking for a way to get back on top. And unfortunately, it's going to be one of these two teams that don't qualify from this matchup. But it's Gen G that just looked very good. One player, though, that I do have to mention in this series is definitely Sean for me. When I was doing a watch party on my channel, and whenever TSM was able to kill Sean as the first or second kill into the round, I was like, finally, TSM has this game in the bag. But if you're looking at the whole series of how Sean fucking played, he was fucking unstoppable. Him and Huynh, both of those players as duelists for that team, as Reyna and Jet, they were just on fire. So when you have those two players that are able to pop off, and GMD and Mikael are able to add a little bit more in terms of support fire, that team looks really good. And you're right, they're super aggressive. They caught TSM off guard from their play style, and I just loved what I saw from Gen G from that matchup versus where they were like in the beta days when they were readable, when it was like, oh, like you said, Ryan, if there's a recon dot towards the A site, they're going to hit that site in 5 seconds. Everybody just rotate, and we're going to read them like a book. This time, by being overly aggressive, being pretty much almost like how LG or Immortals kind of play right now, it kind of catches a lot of the teams off guard, especially TSM, where you saw that result in the end. But that clutch from Kusta was just, it's unfortunate, man, because there was just so much utility left for both of those players on a 2 versus 1 for TSM.
Oh, I mean, what could have been, right? I want to suggest something that I think that someone like Sean really gets unleashed in this more unbounded game style that Gen G bring. Sean was always sort of capable of these really great moments, mechanically very talented player, but felt like he was very constrained under Gen G's previous way of sort of playing the game. Felt like he was really tethered or anchored to certain parts of the map and didn't really get to, try and, I mean, I hate using this term, but try and make a play. I also want to say across the series, Wardell had one of the most insane across the series performances I think I've seen from an individual player. He goes 70 kills, 45 deaths over the entire series. He single-handedly keeps TSM alive on Ascent. The 1v3, I think it was on the B side. I don't even know what it was. I mean, playing from heaven, dropping down, able to to win the round with the operator. What that shouldn't be possible
Or
And
a flick on 5 HP onto, I think it was GMD and Market. Like, was
Yes.
fucking sick too.
I also think that if you watch that game, you see a lot of the time Gen.G are trying to play a bit more pace heavy, and they're trying to quite often get Mikhail in position to get information right. Wardell is very effective at punishing Mikhail across the ascent map specifically for trying to find that information because he's peeking early. He's setting up in positions where normally it's going to be the Jet seeing the Sova because Mikhail steps up, tries to use a recon bolt to get some information, and Wardell is there. 10 and 2 is the kill matrix between those two. And a lot of them were first kills from Wardell. So we talked about, I mentioned earlier, Wardell's better, I think, at dealing with some of these looser teams with more individualistic tendencies to pick them apart when there's no structures in place to get a trade. So I think Wardell, as an individual, is better suited against this new style of Gen.G than its old one, where they played a bit more static and a bit more, together or passive. But it wasn't enough. I mean, it's actually mental to me how he has this individual performance and it just doesn't get him there.
And that's the thing, though, because if you're looking at TSM on paper and you're looking at the results, or you even watch the game, they didn't look that bad either, individually. Like, everybody was doing pretty decent. But I think it came down to, like, there was some rounds that kind of got fumbled. I'm thinking more specifically on Bind whenever they were playing. And because they don't have a Sentinel and they're running double smokes, the amount of times that we had portal runs and crossing over, we don't check 50s, rotating back and forth. Either it's TSM on the defense or even Gen.G on the defense. It seems as though because of the lack of information, trying to retake sites for TSM was kind of like their demise too. So now you're going to try to get back to the drawing board to see, should we get into a point where we bring a Sentinel back into a roster that can maybe even help in terms of them getting the type of the results that they want? Because in the fragging department, they're all able to. It's just a lack of utility that allows them to get that information to come back into the games. Is it good enough, right? Because blind is two smokes, you only have one initiator. If you're going to play on other maps, I think it was Ascent, right, where they went double initiator, it was good enough for them too to have Sky in there, and they had some good results for that. So I think they have to try to maybe bring a Sentinel back on certain maps, and we'll see a different TSM or a better TSM.
I think last thing I wanted to say about Sean as well is I love the fact that he's actually flexing over to different agents too. Like, his Raze is pretty good, his Phoenix is really good and really strong as well. There's an over-reliance on Reyna, I think, at the moment, and considering her potency at the moment, it would not surprise me if we saw Reyna nerf tomorrow. You know what I mean? And then what does Thief do in some cases? How does he adjust?
Sure.
And so I feel for players like Sean being able to spread out and not only frag out on these other duelists, but to use their utility in the right places on the right map, having the Raze on Bind for the Boombot and Hookah, the Phoenix on Haven so you can re-aggress places. It's super important to have your playbook be a bit deeper when you're including other agents. The other thing I was going to say about TSM, and to a lesser extent 100 Thieves, is you can tell that these teams didn't play the Winter Championships and stuff. Why? Because their icebox doesn't look good. You look at Sentinels, LG, XSET, all of these other teams that are starting to bring a bit more Viper and Sage into the fold, even in Europe, even in all of the other regions. Icebox is going to be a bit of a bitch of a map if you aren't playing it in officials as consistently as you could be. Because now 100 Thieves, they won against Sandbox 2-0, sure, but certainly when it comes to how convincing the two maps that they had were, they won, 13-2 on Ascent, and then it was a bit closer against Icebox, against Andbox on Icebox. And so you kind of feel that what if 100 Thieves runs into a team that has a really good Icebox map? They might struggle. That could be a map that they lose and suddenly it's up in the air. One of the reasons why I think TSM lost this series is because their Icebox looked a bit weaker than Gen.G's, because Gen.G was in the Winter Championships, was in the close series of challenges the first time around. They got a lot of experience on this map, and you can see it.
I want to see a heat map of kills on Icebox because I felt like TSM didn't really utilize mid well at all, and they also didn't respect mid's potential in terms of splitting the map. I think like a lot of teams, the narrative was you can't use mid, it's awkward.
I'll find that for you, Mitch. Big shout out to Run It Back for me, because they put me into Discord where I could actually pull out commands and a bot gives me heat maps of kills on Icebox for a matchup.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's cool. I mean, we'll look at that. Again, getting a bit long in the tooth here once more. Let's sit back and enjoy the brilliance that was this Kusta clutch one more time before we move on. Let's get a load of this.
Pick up the spike, get it down, and it's all up to Kusta. A 1v2 as the spike goes down, the run it back available, and the teleporter was taken. They know exactly where he's at. He's able to send it back from whence it came. Can Kusta be the legend here that Gen G need to send TSM home, or will we find ourselves in an overtime? He's got to go. He's working against the clock. The flash has come through. He leaps on out. He tries to sprint towards elbow. He's able to find drone. He just needs to find Elbow. He's able to do it onto Hayes. And Kusta will get the defuse. Gen G will send TSM home.
And there you have it. I love how, you know, and this was pointed out, I think, well early on. Decent commentary as well. Shout out to the broadcasters. But yeah, that he covers his footsteps with the spray to get on top of the container. And I don't think Drone is ready for him there. That is
Drone has no idea, yeah.
It's not that big brain because I noticed it, but it's still sick, and it really speaks, I think, to his pedigree and experience there. So congratulations to Gen G there for sure.
I think everything came down to timing at that point, because I think counting down the bullets, he had like probably 3 bullets left after killing Hayes, but just to be able to run around and surprise Drone because he knew he was coming from teleporter. To run it back, the idea was to throw the hot hands into Hookah so that they could actually slow down the clock and maybe readjust back then. Because if you're watching from Steel's POV on Reddit, he's saying maybe they had some chance where they needed to fall back double elbow or something like that because they knew Kusta was coming in from teleporter. But we know how good Drone could be with a run it back. So if it's not to get a kill, the point there was to run utility so that Kusta gets stuck towards Hookah, where eventually maybe they could have doubled up towards Octagon, doubled up towards elbow, whatever the fuck. But Kusta played it so well, with the timing where he jumped out the window. Hayes probably was at a point where he had to reload at some point or hide from the corner from elbow to bait out the shots from Kusta so that they go for the double peek at some point. But the perfect timing from Kusta allowed for him to separate the 2 individual 1v1s, where his jump on the top from killing Drone back onto the site, Hayes was already moving out, probably didn't think that Kusta was going to land at that spot from the way he was jumping on that box, and it probably caught him off guard. So I think it's more props to Kusta definitely on that 2v1. I don't think it's necessarily on teamwork or communication that was bad for TSM, because you saw how they were working that. They threw both
He was just fast. He was faster than TSM thought he would
Exactly.
be, I think. He played a lot more aggressively, maybe not like a Cypher would normally play. So shout out to him. Next matchup to discuss, probably we're not going to spend as much time on because FaZe Clan do FaZe Clan things again. They end up taking down BBG. BBG, I think they were pretty vocal about how disappointed they were with how they performed as a roster in that particular matchup. You know, we see FaZe Clan, who, you know, tended to drop at least one map each series. It was 13-8 on Bind, and then Ascent with BBG actually win. I thought that looked quite good there, especially critical as usual. But yeah, it gets closed out on Haven, and Marv is just getting away with a lot of ridiculous stuff, I think, over the course of this series. Like, he's just lurking super aggressively and just picking up a ton of kills. And FaZe Clan really put a lot of pressure on BBG. It seems like 2 aggressive styles, and FaZe Clan just are more suicidal.
They're just so unpredictable. I think it really comes down to literally a play from Mav where he got the 4K. I think it was 8-all was the score. And since then, Build by Gamers just completely fell off. I feel like it's easy to compare them to like No Penky in Europe, where they have individually really good players, and therefore they should be doing a bit better than maybe they're currently doing. I think they should have had this lineup. They play a better Valorant than FaZe, but FaZe just do some completely crazy shit that you can't ever really predict. I think it was round 70 of Corey peeking twice into an operator and then losing still. It's just like, who does that? And really, when you see this kind of play, you'd expect better from Overwatch players, for one, because of the utility and all that kind of thing. But you just expect somebody to stop them, and nobody can. They're just getting away with it. It's fucking like Walter White Breaking Bad season 5 kind of shit. Like, how is he getting away with this at this point?
You still gotta give it to Zachary. I think he still continued to play some very good games and continues to move forward here with FaZe. Right. So as a team that we talked about that doesn't get too much limelight these days, and they haven't played Winners Championship. I don't know if they even played GBL. I don't even remember anymore. But this is probably the first time we finally see FaZe doing some good stuff, right? And power to them. They had an easier run, I must say that, but
yes,
I think individually Zachary looked very, especially on Ascent actually. Zachary. Now, people have been saying, okay, so there is some nuance here. People say FaZe Clan, they never play off each other. They're really individualistic. They just fucking yeet abilities in. That's not entirely true. Ascent, we actually saw Corey and Zachary play quite effectively in tandem on the A side, on defense especially, right? Zachary, though, with some fairly creative use of his cipher traps and cages on that A site, made it extremely hard for BBG with their looser approach to actually control it. There was one round where Zachary catches a jet with a tripwire after the dash, and then another player as they try and push it onto the A side towards him. So I thought we saw a very mature, very level-headed game from him especially. And I think that without him sort of being that sort of solid anchor, the pivot for this team, the house of cards for FaZe really falls down. I think it really just doesn't work here. So there's looks like there's a little bit happening there, but I think FaZe are satisfied playing this way.
Yeah.
I think they know more than anyone else the way they play the game. I think they don't particularly feel strongly about changing that and adding structure. I think they want to play this way. I don't think it's going to work in the long term. It's going to be punished, and I don't know how many challenges closed qualifiers FaZe might have to lose until they wake up to this reality, because I don't think this works in the long run. But yeah, they have. Sorry, they go up against version 1. They go up against BBG. You know what I mean? Version 1, newly formed team, really talented players, but haven't had a lot of time. And a BBG team that is still struggling to scratch the surface to make their way into tier 1 and still plays without a lot of structure of their own. If FaZe Clan had to go up against Dignitas or TSM and Gen G, fucking forget about it. Forget about it. Like, they literally tweeted, "We won by going A bunch on Icebox." Ha ha ha. Like, okay, they know what they're doing. People shouldn't be getting mad because at least it's something a little bit fucking different. Just don't put too much value in FaZe stonks right now, because I think there's an expiration date on this playstyle.
Yeah, just real quick on BBG as well. I think Will is a bit of a annoying player to watch in some cases because he is very good in these matches where he's playing up against lower tier players, lower tier teams, just like tier 3 kind of thing. He absolutely dominates, but he never shows up in these really important games. He just doesn't have that impact. And you could say the same about Corey and Baby Bay, but at least those two players almost take it in turns on who's going to try and carry in some cases. Baby Bay on Haven, 50% of his kills were from the off. Like, again, how the hell is he getting away with those kind of numbers? Like, I do think that Will is the kind of player that I want to see more of. I hope that when he gets to play against these, I'm not going to say tier 1 teams because FaZe isn't that, but those teams that are consistently qualifying for these bigger events, he individually needs to show up, because it's kind of like watching Gen G when Sean isn't really appearing in the server, when Thief isn't appearing in the server. He's that kind of caliber of player, but when it goes up against tier 1 teams, we just do not see it.
So we'll keep you up to date with it on how FaZe sort of advance, and we'll maybe discuss our thoughts about them going forward in a moment. But Vansili, you really seem to enjoy the Envy Renegades matchup, and I know that you've got a couple moments you want to share with us.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think overall, as we were talking about Renegades and Stronglegs joining the roster and the IGLing that he brings over to the team. By the way, like he came out with some new flashes that were pretty freaking awesome. It was off camera, but it looked like from the minimap he was throwing like a bird from a ramp that goes into the middle of the minimap between a ramp and middle, and it flashes, I think, mailroom. So I don't know if it's like towards the air and it still flashes out. I think like that's really good in terms of like how Stronglegs or Roy really understands this character for Sky. Overall in this matchup though, like I said, there was a lot of changes in the roles for Renegades, where you now had some different changes in terms of agent compositions and what they're comfortable of playing with, but they still held a pretty good game versus Envy. And I think in the end, especially on this map, it came down to like so many clutches that came down to Envy. We just saw like an FNS 2v1. This one is going to be a 3K from Caboose coming in from Heaven that's still able to clutch it and make it 9-6. And finally, there was a 2K from Food at the last, and that's the thing. It was like 30 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever while the spike has been planted. He's still able to come into the site, get the 2 kills, and get the round into victory for Envy. So yes, there's a little bit of things to iron out for RNG in that series, but overall, I still think they look pretty good. The Reddit plebs that are saying that Renegades the Renegade plebs that said that, or the Reddit whatever, the people that said that Renegades played fucking lost or out of their mind, because we mentioned it on Twitter as well. The amount of Sky flashes, the guiding lights that worked in favor of Roy, of Stronglegs, and helped Renegades to get the rounds in ascent was amazing. Because thinking about Envy, how they like to spread out a little bit on pressure on B side and A side, in piss around, second round, when they came out towards B main and a guiding light came out and fully caught out, was it or Caboose or Mummy at B main, and they were able to get the kill and move in for the pistol round, was very well done. They studied Envy very well. And the round that they had with a flash into mid and to converge 5 players into mid on an eco and still win it versus Envy, they know how to play. They just need to iron it out the communication a little bit more. But I don't think it's because they look lost. It's just because Envy also looked very good in terms of playing their own ways, right? We talked about how the last time that they played, Mummy was also always jet opping, but they went back into like the Mummy Omen op, the Caboose into the Omen, and have food going into the Duelist. There's been a lot of that going into their winning ways that showed that some good results for Envy. Sorry, I rambled, but it was just like a good match for both of these two teams.
I feel like very quickly, I think that Mummy was always a Omen opper. He just sort of was like, I like doing this. It's just the kind of thing that I do. And I think that, Caboose has to play Omen. But I think on Split, it's Split specifically because that's where Mummy needs to play Jet, or at least feels like he needs to do that. Crashies is so good as a support, as a supporting player. He's incredible. You know how many times is he just locking down the B site on Ascent? Like he's getting he's going 1v2, 1v3 on the B site and giving so much time for Envy to rotate. Because Renegades are so fast, right?
That's right.
He's right in your face.
Aggressive,
the psychos. Crashies is able to play around on that site, chill in Boathouse, and find 2 or 3 kills before the rest of Envy come. I don't know. I feel like he is such maybe he's not unsung by this point. I think even the scoreboard Stevens can sort of point out how good he is, but I'm really impressed with this team. I obviously think Caboose is still sort of coming into his own as well. And now that he's not sort of only on Omen duty and gets to play a little bit more of the Duelist, I thought he was incredible on the Raze. And Food now seems to be doing more dedicated Duelist stuff. Because I know he was mixing in the Sage before, but there was no Sage on Split or Envy at all.
No, definitely.
Yeah, there was a little bit of Phoenix, a bit of Sova that he played, a bit of Raze as well. It's kind of frustrating to watch Envy constantly change up who their Omen player is, because it was mostly a Mummy this time who was a really good Jet. Like, I was singing his praises constantly for the Winter Championship with Van Silly when we did a video about that, and I felt that was the best Envy that we saw, and then they changed it up for Challengers 1. It didn't look as convincing. Still looked good, but certainly not top 4 to qualify for Challengers 2 good. And then they change it again. And I kind of said this last time. I feel that they're trying to go for more of a European playstyle when they had Food on the stuff like Sage and stuff before. A bit more passive, a bit more utility focused, because that's where Envy looked the best, when the pace of the game is slowed down a little bit and they could just bully and take control. Mummy's Operator was, a great indication of that playstyle beforehand. But now it's another different look. It's amazing that Envy have been able to be so versatile that they still qualify under a different playstyle, where we look at somebody like T1 that's just completely fucking falling apart. It's a very different ball game, but it really shows the strength of this Envy roster. But really, we're not going to see them elevate to potentially a top 5 team if every time they fail with something, that they change something yet again and kind of go back to the drawing board and go, actually, no, you play Omen, I want to play Duelist. So that's the only frustration as somebody that's really been enjoying watching Envy ever since First Strike, that we don't get to see what Sentinels had in Challengers 1, where they kind of go, we don't know how the fuck to play up against this info-stealing playstyle, but then they adapt, evolve, and overcome it in the end. Envy just seemed to kind of resort to changing something up again, and then it's the same problem with something else.
Van Silly, Envy beat Space Station Gaming. I know you're a big fan. They give you a lot of merch. And Renegades. Are you convinced that this is a true contender when it comes to the closed qualifier?
For Envy, 100%. I think Envy has always been a top contender for me in Valorant in North America. They've just hit some sort of roadblock when it comes to finally getting into that last leg to make it onto the big stage. They just fall short. And I think one of the biggest thing and the biggest obstacles that's going to help them get over that hump is finally beating Sentinels, right? And I think when they went back into a different type of strategy, I think it's maybe try to find ways to beat Sentinels at that point, where they finally suffered their 8 loss. What, Ryan, you saw that and you witnessed that during the Winners' Championship. So now we're hoping that exactly. So now that they changed the style into Challengers 1, didn't look too good. They go back into their winning ways into Challengers 2. Then what more did they add into that to finally get that ingredient that's finally going to beat Sentinels? Is it just now communication at that point because the agent composition and the setup is good enough for the team.
Okay. Well, I mean, you said they need to beat Sentinels, or they want to do that to sort of shake the monkey off their back.
Yep.
Envy have a chance to do that if they beat XSET
Correct.
and NV
Correct.
phase, and
Correct.
Sentinels beat phase, which they may well do. Last team to put the cap on as we're looking back. 100 Thieves look, I mean, Nitro comes back into the team here. They, you know, theoretically don't have exactly the easiest opposition, but they still run through
They
pretty
breeze through it.
comfortably. They take on Ghost, but Andbox, that victory against Andbox Gaming, who are granted lacking poach, seems to be tough for them. But I mean, they look good, man. They look really well drilled and really solid.
Definitely.
I thought you were going to take this one, Van Silly.
Yeah, no, sorry, definitely. I was gonna say like when you're looking at the series between these two teams, again, it's a full agent composition change that they had for the roster here for Nbox at that point. And when you're looking at how things are being played on Ascent, I don't think it's necessarily. Yeah, yes, there's a small factor in terms of how much they had to learn going into the game for Nbox with this quote unquote new roster. I would call it a new roster because of the agent shakeups. But 100 Thieves, you got to give it back to them. When we were criticizing them, sorry, from being upset by Carpe Noctem. But is it because of Silence? Is it because of Nitro? Well, it definitely shows that Nitro coming back into this roster, it came back into their winning ways. But also on this matchup more specifically, as we're looking literally at the round that we wanted to talk about, is how Steel is able to get these mid lurks all the fucking time versus Nbox. So the timing that he has and the way that he plays the Sentinels is just very good. And it allows him to just have these type of plays because you have another veteran in Nitro that came back into the roster and just 100 Thieves is back in their winning ways. Not only that, did you see how much Asano is fucking farming the other players and the teams that were playing before getting into this matchup? They're a brand new, not a brand new, they're the 100 Thieves that we know. That's the first strike winners, and also into back in that conversation of who's that number one spot in NA. Is it 100 Thieves or is it Sentinels?
I mean, they look so good here. I mean, the problem, I think Ascent was disaster of a map and not really worth taking a close look at. It was like a 13-3, just oof,
that's
rough.
It. Yeah,
I don't think that 100 Thieves needed to really do anything too crazy to win that one. Icebox was a bit more interesting, but again, I think Nbox, I mean, you might disagree with this, Ryan. They suffer from the same problem that TSM had, where they really don't respect the power of mid control, and they don't respect Steel's ability to lurk and constantly backstab them, either going up tube or going under and getting into kitchen. That lockdown placement, that's fine. That lockdown placement we saw in kitchen, Steel said on his stream that he's never done that before.
Yeah, and really, you don't want to allow a team to be able to do that in some cases if you're Nbox. But again, we've highlighted all of this stuff. It's a rebuttal at this point, severely disagreeing with your take. But like with 100 Thieves as well, like they made every round close, even the rounds that they lost, and they did lose a few on Icebox, which is worth bearing in mind. But also, everybody knew their role. Dicey got a lot of flack before because of that Carpe Noctem game because he didn't frag as much as he should do, and then people are saying that he's not as good on that Jet Oppin role because apparently they need a scapegoat like that. He doesn't have to be Wardell. He doesn't need to be that kind of player. He knows this role. Everybody on 100 Thieves knows their playstyle and what they should be doing. And they're so good at being able to action off that. It's just the minor stuff that 100 Thieves are able to do that just fundamentally they're sound. Even when they're down in clutches, they still manage to win a couple of rounds. Even on rounds they lose, that Nitro play where he touches the spike and gets 3 plays of Ambucks killed because they had to go back and see if he was actually dedicating for the defuse. The spike bloomed. It killed all 3 of those players because they couldn't get out. It's just smart shit like that 100 Thieves is going to be able to pull out on the day. I just think the Sentinels is a bit of a stronger team now because we've seen them more. We've seen them have to adapt when they go down. 100 Thieves, we haven't seen it because they haven't played in certain tournaments. They obviously missed Challenges 1. And so the hope is that they actually do take a bit of a beating in some areas, like they lose a map in a best-of-3 series, for example, so that they can then go to the drawing board, see what they need to touch up, and get better and stronger as a team, because Sentinels have been doing that over the past month or so.
I think, Lex obviously points out in the chat there that Steel gets a lot done there. I actually think if you really wanted to learn a bit more about that game, Steel gives a very frank assessment of that map, particularly in his stream that evening, where he even actually brings up some of his point of view on certain rounds to show what he was experiencing. Incredibly insightful, very educational. But, it definitely seemed apparent that Boy seemed to be confident that just throwing a wall in tube was enough to really secure the middle part of the map. And there were a couple times where like Steel has just stood there, and as soon as the wall goes down, he walks up, and Boy is like, "Oh, my wall's down," and sort of meanders back towards kitchen and gets caught while Steel's already holding an angle. So I think the understanding of how to play Icebox needs to be updated a bit for Andbox. Obviously, they got a whole host of things that they need to sort of change. So we're definitely going to give them a little bit of leeway there. But it's good to see 100 Thieves go back to winning ways. We get to see them now pitted against other top teams in the closed qualifier, which we're going to talk about now because we have a bracket that's going to be set for the closed qualifiers. And this is going to be sick. Obviously, we already had a lot of fun watching and some of us casting the open qualifiers, but the closed one here, Sentinels phase first round, some old Overwatch rivalry to be renewed there. Obviously, we talked about NB and XSET. Immortals and Gen G, two teams looking very different with slightly more aggressive play styles. And then Luminosity versus 100 Thieves, which I'm excited about that. Very contact heavy, information starvy style from Luminosity versus 100 Thieves, very ponderous, very sort of macro oriented gameplay. And you can see here how you advance to Master. So winning the whole thing doesn't quite matter as much, but 4 of these teams will go through. And that's where I want to segue into asking you guys who advances to Masters. Remember, this is the first week where people actually advance to Masters here in NA. So I want to start with you, Van Silly, and I want to know your 4 teams that will advance.
Sentinels, no, hands down.
Why?
It's fucking Sentinels. I don't think there's going to be any issue going into the bracket for Sentinels at this point. I think finally that you've seen from night and day of what Shazam was able to do with the team and say, look, they want to play this certain style of Mortals, we'll fucking do that. You want to do that, LG? We'll fucking do that. And they won. So now they have different types of play styles and different playbooks versus different teams that continues. I think it will show them how well they'll do.
Sure. I think, like I said, we're all going to agree. We're going to come to a consensus
Okay,
on the top 4 instead of having individuals. So Ryan, I mean, I would put Sentinels there. I don't see why they don't qualify. They go up against FaZe, and then they'll probably get a second chance as they drop into the lower bracket if they lose to Envy. But I think Sentinels, I was so impressed with them because they were getting kind of pooed on by really upstart teams, and they just figured it out. And they didn't have any choice. They didn't have the option to go away and like reinvent themselves or go to a fucking monastery for 5 months and come back enlightened. They had to figure it out whilst they were getting clapped by these teams, and they did it in style.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff was on the fly, right? It was just, fuck it, I'm going Reyna. And it worked out so well because you know that Sinatra and Sentinels have the agent pool to work with that. When you have Sick on your team, you can get him to pretty much play anything and he'll have a world-class showing. I think Sentinels is a given. Considering 100 Thieves is on the other side of the bracket, I would also pretty much want to put them in there. I do think that LG is going to be a really tough game. It's a must-watch, in all honesty, because it really does ask the question, are 100 Thieves, have they evolved to the point that they understand the meta that LG have pioneered at this point with info starving? What have they got up their sleeve in order to try and deal with that? I do think that they've been watching very closely. Obviously, when you see Shazam molding on stream, you kind of go, okay, let's make sure that that's not going to be us, guys. So they know. It's not like they've been locked in a room in a locker somewhere and they haven't seen this game and this meta play out. They know. They've sort of had a ringside view of it all going down. Now they need to act on it. They need to either do it better than LG, which I don't think they honestly can, or try and work around it, which I think is typical to the 100 Thieves playstyle that we expect. Fundamentally, they're sound. Everybody knows what they should be doing. That's the key thing for this team. And I think beating LG and Immortals Gen G afterwards should be pretty much a shoo-in for these guys.
Okay, so Brian, you think that 100 Thieves can actually make it through and actually qualify by the upper semis? Vans, do you actually think that is reasonable? Do you think that they go and beat LG and then the winner of Immortals and Gen G? Are we that confident?
Yep, I'm confident with that as well. I think, can we also agree that we don't need to go with 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of where they end, but agree that these are the 4 teams with random ranking, right?
Yeah.
So 100 Thieves for me, that's the thing. I echo Ryan's sentiments that they're going to be able to make it and qualify. But the bigger test definitely is looking at LG in the first place, because as you said, as composed as they are for 100 Thieves in terms of their strategies, is it going to be the type of play style that will be able to beat LG, where Sentinels, who are supposed to be somewhat structured, had struggled versus LG at that point? So what more will still bring into the playbook for 100 Thieves that's going to be able to stop LG in the first round? because we could talk about the lurks from Steel, but the lurks from Dapper are as fucking good. So in terms of that playstyle, I think it's very similar. I just want to know how they're going to beat LG at that point. That's the bigger test. If they don't beat LG, then no, they don't make it. But I mean, I'm confident that they will.
We have to lock him. We have to lock them in here. I'm the host here. I think if I have my opinion here, we'll never agree on any top 4. So I'm gonna allow you guys to try and find a consensus, because I don't see why they blast through both Immortals and Luminosity so effortlessly. But I'll leave it to you guys to put this together, so I don't have to take the flak when you're wrong. Okay, so. So let's agree. We probably see FaZe duck out pretty early on here, right? Do we expect them to really go far, Ryan?
No, not at all. I think that these are teams that should punish their playstyle. Sentinels especially, they've got really good at beating better teams with a better playstyle than that, right? So you would expect Sentinels to make quick work of it. It really is a case of who wins that of Exet versus Envy. I think that you might want to say Exet, considering recent performances. Exet seem to be on top in that fashion. I feel like Envy seem to fluff up their lines when they get to this position of tournament. You know, I don't think they qualify, in all honesty, because of the stuff that I've seen previously. The thing that you need to know about these 8 teams as well is if they don't qualify for Masters, they're a dead shoe-in for Challengers 3. They don't need to go for the qualifiers. So second chance for Masters next week, I can see Envy qualifying. Except those are an interesting one, because I think that they're very good at their playstyle, but not as good as LG. I think LG is going to be the other team to qualify. Even though they're going to lose to 100 Thieves straight away, but I can see a losers bracket run. I think they could beat Immortals or Genji, depending on who loses that matchup. They should move through, and then they win against Exet or Envy. Like, LG are really good at being able to do that, and it would be a really stellar performance for them in order to do it. And I do say should has been the operative word, because they've shown that they're capable. It's just whether they can actually do it or not.
So you're saying it's Exet and LG?
No, I'm not saying Exet at all.
Do you think that LG go further than Immortals in this bracket?
Oh,
do you think they have a better chance? Because if you're saying that, that means you mean it's Sentinels, 100 Thieves, LG, and Immortals are the other 2. So you're not thinking Genji, you're not thinking Envy, you're not thinking Exet. If you think LG and Immortals here, that's pretty wild.
You reckon? I don't know. I feel like Immortals did well to get to the finals, but as soon as we saw them play up against Sentinels, we really saw a weakened side from them in that retrospect. I feel that Genji are much improved, and I think their result against TSM is exceptional. Don't get me wrong. What is the chance that happens again, though, against teams that are on a much better run of form? I do think that MC has had a great impact on this team. Hell, even the individual players have brought this team up to a really nice height. I still think it's a long way to go before this team actually contends for a top 4, top 5 spot in the region. So I think it is really between Immortals or Exet. I think Envy is similar to Genji, where they're flirting with the idea, can maybe have an upset, but they have a couple of monkeys on their shoulders that they can't seem to deal with. Whereas LG Exet, they're just smashing teams like Sentinels all day long in some cases. So they don't have that fear.
We need to lock this in here. So you guys, Vansily, can you agree with LG being another team that gets through?
I think this is where we're gonna need you, Uber, to like try to break the law of average here, because I actually have Envy qualifying, and I have between Immortals, Genji, and Luminosity, it could be any of those 3. And I think as they're on such a high run and a high rise from their win versus TSM, I'm even going to have a hot take and say that it's going to be Genji over LG.
Ooh, okay. So first, I agree with you. I think that, no, this is getting confusing right now. I would, if I had to fill this out, my last 2 teams would be Envy and Immortal. That's what I would. I think Immortals. I think Immortals will get there. I think Luminosity maybe a little bit. I think if they're pitched up against Immortals, I think that Immortals come out on top there. So I would say, Immortals and Envy would be my last 2. Is there a wall where we can be okay with saying it's Sentinels, 100 Thieves, Immortals, and Envy?
I'm just not sure on Envy. The reason why is because every time we say, Envy could actually win first strike, maybe because they played so good, they went for the close qualify and won that. They completely fell off the face of the earth. I just don't think that Envy, they always seem to fall at this final hurdle.
Okay.
Like, they're good at being the top 6, but top 4, that's always a bit of a stretch. And even from the recent results of Challengers 1, we just didn't see that Envy that we know and love.
All right, Ryan, you get to choose that 3rd spot then.
LG.
Okay, you think it's LG. So Sentinels, 100 Thieves, LG, Immortals. That is our final answer. Obviously, this is by no means a consensus. we definitely reached this. I mean, we should have phoned a friend, I think, for Christ's sake. Yeah, this is definitely not a consensus graphic by any means. We're gonna get clipped out of context. That's fine. It's
You're
just a
getting
fun
the
little
European
thing.
expert to make the decision.
No.
I'll fall on that sword. Don't you worry about it. I'm on the other side of the pond.
Actually, are you
so-
actually a European caster? Because you've been doing nothing but NA anyways.
Yeah, well, I can't do neither now. I might as well just be on Southeast
In
Asia,
Ryan's
see what's
case,
going on
NA
over there.
NA stands for nah, fam. You ain't
Yeah.
casting Valorant.
Not available. I think that's what it is.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Yeah, you can get upset in the chat if you want. It's kind of peanut brain to get really upset about something like this. It's a bit of fun, but yeah, that's what
fucking
we're gonna
upset.
stick with. I mean, who knows? It's gonna be a ton of fun.
Yes.
I love the armchair Andys as well, who seems so convinced. I personally, yeah, I'm a little surprised that we don't think Envy. I think that's where we disagree most. I think we disagree most on Envy's capacity to get through. And in fairness, they had an easy run. They did. You can't fucking argue with the fact that they played against teams that are ostensibly and obviously weaker. If we'd seen like an Envy Gen G, for example, who knows how that would have gone? I don't see why. I mean, if you out there don't think that Luminosity, teams like Luminosity and Immortals are a real chance at this, you have not been fucking paying attention for the last.
Yeah, who sent them
Sorry.
home in Challengers 1? It was Luminosity and Xset. It's not like I'm chatting shit. Like, Envy just struggles against their playstyle.
Yes. If you're still out there doubting LG and IMT, you're the clown. All right. So there it is. You can clip that one for posterity, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to have you with us so far. As we speak right now, European VCT is going on. So we're still working through the big brackets there. That's going to take a little longer because it's best of 3 stuff. It's been a pleasure, Vansili. Ryan, have you with me, especially Ryan. Thank you for jumping in on short notice. It's again really good to get to pick your brain a little bit here. Shout out to Vansili's dog, which got to cameo on this broadcast for a decent period of time. Cute little thing that it is. Next Tuesday, 11 a.m. PDT, we have a lot to talk about, like a lot to talk about, because I think, well, you'll find out why. There'll be a lot happening on that particular day, I feel, in terms of Valorant Esports. We're gonna want to talk a lot about what we saw in Europe's Open qualifier, as well as talking about NA's close qualifier. So it's all happening then, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, remember, you can follow us at twitter.com/DNpeak. Obviously, twitch.tv/DNpeak. You're here right now watching it live. You know that. And of course, if you want to know the YouTube channel for Valoranting, !YouTube in the chat, because we don't have a custom YouTube channel yet. There are some requirements for that we have not quite met. That's fine. I swear too much as well, so we're never going to get monetized. So just forget about that.
True.
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us as a guest this week. And we'll see you guys next week, 11 a.m. PDT. See you then.